What's happening? It's James from Arcade Attack with you for another stacked podcast. And with me on today's journey is the very sharpest of tools in the box, if in fact the box had been left open and out in the rain for years. I've got Dylan.
That's a very accurate description, mate.
Thank you. Bit creaky.
No. Fair
What else do you expect from one of my intros?
Fair cop, mate.
We've got Keith.
Hello.
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 That was a very James May
Yes.
Top Gear. Hello.
I'm looking forward to a very enlightening discussion.
There he is, ladies and gentlemen.
Ooh.
And of course, the resident piece of the furniture. It's Adrian!
Yeah, a
How
real
are we,
menace
fellas?
to society. That's me.
Public enemy. How are we, fellas? How are we, chaps?
Good.
Doing all right?
Good, yeah.
Yeah, really
Age,
good.
you
Really
good?
good, thank you. Yeah, really good.
Excellent.
Adrian.
Well, before I like to sort of, hijack the start of pod, especially James's. I pick on James a bit.
What?
So
Never.
I know. So I think we just want to really quickly say thank you to our patrons. We've got quite a few. We've got a smorgasbord of patrons. That's not a
A
thing.
smorgasbord of Yeah, it is.
We've got a great selection of people. So I thought we'd just shout out a few people, and really, we do appreciate your help. So we have got Luke in the house.
Luke. Thank you, Luke.
We've got Omar,
Omar.
who I think discovered us via BBC Two of all places.
He was listening to Radio 2 when I did the
Yeah,
Midnight
Radio 2,
Masterminds.
nice.
Yeah.
Mad.
And, which was interesting.
And we've got here, I don't know if it's two people, we've got glitters and stickers.
Glitters and stickers.
Glitters
Thank
and
you both.
stickers.
Yeah.
Were they a band?
So that's a cool name for a band, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've also got Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
We've also got, can't say that very well, but is it Got Peb? Garty Peb? I don't know.
We love you anyway.
Yes.
Oh, Garb Peb. Yeah.
We're
still
trying our
love you.
best, guys, but thank you.
The next name's easier to say, Womblefish.
Mumblefish.
We like Womblefish. And there's Brian as well in the house.
Brian in the house.
Tristan.
Tristan.
We got Tim TJ Walker.
Tim
Oh,
TJ.
that's
Oh,
nice.
TJ
Now
Walker.
Now there's a
mate.
name.
Smooth.
What does TJ stand for? Toe Jam.
Uh-oh, sorry, Tim.
And we got a
Sorry.
Patreon called Earl as well.
Well,
That'd be
we
awesome.
used to have a patron called Tim. He's gone now. So,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
Tim. And we got Matt Harris in the house. We
Matt Harris in the house.
like Matt. We got Tor.
Tor in the house.
Tour?
Just Tor.
Tor in the house.
Dave H.
Dave H in the house.
James MacDonald.
James McDonald in the house.
This one is just random gobbledygook of letters and numbers. I think it's just didn't want to give a proper username.
Okay,
Oh,
But I
fine.
think it's
Anonymous user.
well, it could be Jag actually. Maybe it's
We still love you.
Jag 515. I think maybe, but it's not anyway. And it's Andy.
Andy.
Andy E. And we also got Andy S. Got two Andys.
Andy E and Andy S. Thank
Andy's
you both.
bringing it up.
I think they're the current sort of live patrons. We've got a few free members that I think might become real paid ones in a few
Yes.
days. So
Amazing.
crossed.
maybe we'll reveal those names in a future episode. We'll
Well,
see.
we've got some Patreon stuff lined up, haven't we? So already from some
Oh,
some
yeah.
good suggestions. So as soon as those start going up, then hopefully that'll bring a few of you across to the dark side.
Get involved.
Yeah,
Get
please.
involved.
Join
It's always good to shout those guys out because we love them. Love
Thanks,
them to
guys.
bits.
Yes.
On to the order of business for today, then. And you're going to love this one. Now, you're going to love this one. And I'm hoping everyone out there is going to love this one as well. So listeners will know, of course, that we've covered a load of deep dives and journeys through like the golden ages of certain games, certain genres, etc., etc. But, big, massive, hairy but, what about a journey through one of retro games' most loved peripherals? No, I'm not talking about the Virtual Boy. And I'm not talking about the Jag controller.
Oh,
It's the power glove. It's the power glove.
not even
Oh,
Donkey
no, not the
Kong's
power.
bongos.
No, not Donkey Kong's bongos. Yeah.
The Sega activator.
And in actual fact, it's funny because I think you did an episode on some of the.
We did some of the
the
crazy
we did.
peripherals.
Yeah,
didn't we?
yeah.
Definitely listen to that one because I think even you struggled with some of them, didn't you? You didn't even know, did you? But so on this pod, I'm going to take you guys into the world of the humble light gun.
Yes.
And some of its
Come on.
amazing games. And I think Keith already said that it's like an episode that's way overdue.
Oh, yeah. We've been talking about doing it for years.
So I've taken it on. And once again, it is a rabbit hole job where I started looking at it and thinking, oh, I know the titles and I know some
Yeah,
of the
there can't be
guns.
that many.
Yeah, there's not. Oh, okay. There's hundreds of guns and titles. So we're going to try and get through as much as we possibly can. So are we ready to take a bit of a trip?
I'm excited because it's a really interesting history, I'm sure. We started
Well,
yonks ago.
Oh, yonks, and a bit more. Yeah. So as per usual, these types of pods, they wouldn't be fit for purpose, would they, if we didn't dust off the old time machine and take a trip back to the beginning of where light guns were born? The question is, exactly when was that? And before you guess, a word of warning here, chaps, that it's slightly earlier than you'd probably think.
Oh.
Throw some educated guesses.
So
at me.
we're saying light guns, not like the kind of mechanical.
I will
Type.
expand. I will
Okay.
expand. But yes, so light guns.
Light guns.
Light
Okay.
guns.
I know there was a light gun for the Spectrum, so that would have been early 80s.
There was indeed.
So
There
I'm
was indeed.
thinking early 80s because it wouldn't be one of the first things you invent, surely.
Okay, so we're going sort of specky era, early 80s. Okay, any advances?
I'm going to say maybe there was an arcade that I don't remember.
Okay,
From like the early 80s, or so let's say I'll just throw out 1978.
78. So Keith's walking on the wild side and going a bit earlier. Dill's kind of looking very pensive over there.
This is funny because you said, like, yeah, it's earlier than you think.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose it'd only need a black and white TV to work.
Yep.
So maybe I'm thinking like late 60s.
Whoa.
What is he on about?
So Dill's gone late 60s.
Yeah.
Well, you'd be very pleased to know, Dill, that you're completely wrong.
Yeah.
You're all completely wrong, and you're
Oh.
way off.
Oh,
You're way off, and Dill's off by 30 years.
No.
Believe it or
What?
not.
What?
Yes. The year we need to go back to is,
Explain.
in fact, 1936.
No, it's not.
what?
I mean, I was the closest out of these guys. so-
I'll take that. Yeah, I'll take that. So, in January 1936, to be precise, and over to the good old US of A company called Seaberg. Ever heard of them?
Nope.
Nope, I didn't think you probably would have. They were primarily a jukebox gearing and vacuum tube amplifier manufacturers. Has anyone seen any of those odd stereos that have what looks like a sort of a bulbous
Yes. Yeah.
sort of casing, glass
Yeah, yeah.
casing? And they what they do is they give you a fantastic sound on an amplifier. And anyone that knows their audio would know that vacuum tubes give really, really deep, rich sound that you can't really get any other way. So these guys, Seaberg, were making these particular vacuum tubes for jukeboxes and other various parts, okay? So, and they just decided to use some new technology that was called the electric eye light sensing vacuum tube. Yeah, don't get too excited. All right, don't get too excited. For something new and very exciting, a light gun shooting game. Believe it or not. 1936 we're talking about, yeah? So the game featured a mechanical flying duck which moved across a scenic backdrop. It had a small circular hole in the centre of its body, and at certain intervals on the movement, it would expose one of these light-sensing vacuum tubes. So the player held a very realistic-looking rifle, and it was wired into the machine, and it produced a small ray of light when the trigger was pulled. If the player managed to pull the trigger whilst aiming directly at one of the exposed vacuum tubes, the ray of light would hit the tube and illuminate it, thus scoring a point for the player.
Oh my god, that is amazing.
Did you have
Pre-World War
1936?
II? That's
There you are. Did you have 1936 down as the
crazy.
first light gun? No, and I certainly didn't when I was researching it. Now, there are some conflicting stories about whether this was in fact the very first light gun game, as several patents and abandoned models had been documented earlier than that, believe it or not. But for the fact that Seaberg had actually completed and used it in the wider public means that, at least for us, we're going to class it as the very first sort of public, coin-op light gun game. But there were others that were sort of patented and scheduled and talked about, and there's kind of bits of documents and things, but were never actually made. So, do we know what that machine was called?
Light machine.
I've kind of given it away slightly.
So you said Seaberg.
What does the
Is it called Duck Hunt?
no?
Tuh.
No. No, you'd think it was, but what did I say the gun produces when you press the trigger?
Light gun. It's called light gun.
No. What does it produce when you press the trigger? A ray. Yeah, ray of.
Light.
So the machine was called the Seaberg Rayo Light.
Oh, okay. Real
Yes,
light.
the
Sounds
Seaberg
like a mayo, but a light version. A mayo light.
light mayo. How'd you get to
Hellman's
mayo?
Rayo light.
If someone was really good at it, they'd be quicker than a Rayo light.
He's here all podcast, unfortunately. Now, where are we? So, but we're going to put the Seaberg Raylight down as the first one. But before we really get going on the old roller coaster ride, I have got to briefly mention, and there was a predecessor to the first light gun games, and they were called electric gun games. Now, I think you briefly mentioned that, Keith, didn't you, when you were guessing, and you said
Just mechanical type. Yeah.
So these were mock rifles hooked up to a cabinet which had a basic backdrop and a target to shoot, much like the Ray of Light, but operated very differently. So it used a wiper blade that moved when the gun was moved and made contact with the backdrop when the trigger was pressed. So when the gun was being moved itself, the whole thing was moving essentially.
Yeah,
all right, so it was completely mechanical. Yeah, it was completely mechanical. And then what happened is, when you press the trigger, it would close a circuit and it would register a shot. But it wasn't an actual ray of light.
No,
it wasn't actually, it wasn't using that to identify the targets. So when you think about it, for 1936, that's extremely clever technology.
It really is, yeah.
Now, for a bag of sweets, when do we think the first patent was registered for that type of machine, the mechanical one? So we're delving a little bit even further back.
Ooh.
So 1936 was the Seaberg.
I think you mentioned the war. So when the war's going on, the last thing you're going to think about is a patent on something. So I think it may be actually a bit late. I'm going to say about the 50s, 1950s.
You reckon for the mechanical ones?
Oh, mechanical ones.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
the
he's
mechanical
asking.
ones.
Yeah, yeah.
So
right.
slightly before.
I reckon earlier. So I'm going to say 1905.
1905, you're not far off. It was 1887. Believe it or not. And that was the first fully fledged electric gun game being made and operated in 1896 by J.L. McCulloch. The fact is then that the gun and shooting style amusement or arcade type games actually go back as far as the first coin-op machines themselves. So they are as old as arcades in their entirety, yeah? And to quote Axel Foley in Beverly Hills Cop 2, it's like shooting guns in the house, which it was, which is a lot. And a lot of people, you can see why people loved it though. You could basically go and play one of these things and just shoot to your heart's content and have no repercussion whatsoever. So are we satisfied that we've dipped our toes into the ancient waters, literally ancient waters, of light gun games' earliest models? Yes?
Yes.
Like it got a bit of a taste? We're going to move it on. So, after the success of the Ray of Light machine, Seaberg continued to make other such iterations of its light gun games, with such examples as Jailbird, where you have to shoot the convict.
Okay.
There's one called Shoot the Barman, which, why would you do
Wow,
that?
Okay. Bit extreme.
Yeah, I know. Dale's got his head in his hands, and I'm
I mean, I
struggling with that
felt
as well.
like that a few times at pubs, but I'm not
Get the wrong drink.
Not to the,
Remember when we tried to order Snake Bite Black in the ship?
oh,
that
yeah,
guy,
I'm telling that
he was
night,
so angry at us.
Yeah, shoot them. Yeah.
He said, I can't serve you that, it's illegal.
Is it?
Then you can mix it yourself. Anyway, let's not
Anyway, that's a different
drinks tips
discussion.
are another pod. Yeah.
So we'll shoot that barman then. Well, you could shoot the barman. And there was one hilariously called Shoot the Mother-in-Law.
Oh, oh no! Oh no!
Oh yes. Bearing in mind we're back in the late 30s.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, slightly irreverent. No PC. Kind of. Yeah, there were no filters, and essentially these were just conversions of the duck shooting cabinet, where the target and the backdrop were replaced with the relevant parts, depending on which of the above ones were on display. There were some other companies that sort of hoved into view in the mix. There was one called Chicago Coin, and they had a game called Ray Gun, and they had another company called Bally, and they had games called Convoy and Sky Battle.
Bally,
Very
very good.
Big name. Yeah.
We are. All variations of light and the electromechanical shooters. Well, they were both kind of around at the same time. These variations continued with others being made in the US to reflect the fact that they were in the war with Japan. Feel free to go and search up the variations and the names on those, because I'm not going to say them because they're slightly less than politically correct.
Okay.
And I'll leave you to go and search for those down that particular rabbit hole. Okay? So there we go. Next big milestone in the development of the light gun cabinet was again good old Seaberg. Okay?
Hey.
They're absolutely reeling it in. And they released their biggest title, which was Shoot the Bear, in 1947.
A little bit more acceptable. A little bit.
Yeah, if
a
you're being
little
attacked
bit.
by a bear, I
Let's
suppose.
be honest, there's not much that is completely acceptable these days, but it's slightly more than some of the titles that we've mentioned, yeah? And it was one of the first to introduce sound effects into the experience, all right? So there was a range of backgrounds used to switch up the gameplay, and it featured the tagline, "It's legal, it's fun." It became the most well-known version of this type of cabinet and was played by millions. So it raked in a fair few dollars on that one. At this point, chaps, we come to what can only be described as a bit of a yawning chasm in the light gun game history. And the reason for this is that despite the success of Seaberg's Ray Light series of shooters, the vast majority of manufacturers actually favoured the electromechanical design of the cabinets. So Seaberg kind of put themselves out there and smashed it essentially, but it just wasn't enough.
With the mechanical ones, was it cheaper, more reliable tech?
It was.
So
I'm not sure that I don't think it was as much of a stretch to have to produce, and in terms of to make something innovative, which they'd done, or it was just a case that they thought Seaberg's got this thing wrapped up, we're not going to bother. So,
It's funny that we should have really known that, because in Back to the Future 3, obviously one of the guys there at that little fair that they have has one for Mighty to shoot at.
Does.
There you go.
Sorry.
Colt Peacemaker. That's it. That's sad, isn't it? Jesus, I've seen that way too many times.
Although that might have just been him shooting targets.
He was.
But anyway,
He was. I think he was just shooting.
there was some
targets.
kind of like mechanism that was counting his things, right? Because he
I
was
believe
shooting.
so.
it.
Yeah. Well, you could. I mean, as I say, that fits in with. I think that was 1885.
Yeah.
Now, bearing in mind that's not a completely out of
Yeah.
because 1887 was the first patent for the.
There you go.
So there you go. You could
Little
you know,
nod.
shooting gallery. And it was a game, so
There you go.
not a light gun, but it was still a shooting gallery. So there you go. But a vast majority of these machines use mechanical linkages between the gun and the target, along with sound effects and lighting to deliver the shooting experience. Now, even though they use lighting, it's important to differentiate. It was not a light gun. Okay. So most of these machines, were machines from the 50s and 60s. Still, so we're catching up with you.
Thank you.
And they used a lot of pinball electronics to operate the scoring system, which again, pinball machines were all the rage. So they simply adapted the style of the gun, the target, and the backdrop to suit their given theme, which again meant that manufacturers could just switch out quite easily and change the themes. These were also very clever in that the shooter would also feel as though that they're aiming long range to the targets due to the mirror and the style of build, but were in fact very close. So it meant that the cabinet didn't have to be enormous. It's worth mentioning at this point that Sega were a big producer of rear projection electromechanical gun games, believe it or not, and released several titles and cabinets back in the late 60s. One such was Duck Hunt, believe it or not.
See?
That's a Nintendo game.
No, there was one called Duck Hunt, which saw the player able to shoot a flying duck which disappeared from the screen when hit and offered varying points for the location of the hit. So, for example, headshot was worth more. But despite this fresher, more modern approach to the gun game, the cabinets still used electromechanical underpinnings, so were technically not a fully fledged light game per se. You can see what's going on here, can't you? So there's been a great big gap between the Seeburg iterations and then what we're about to talk about next. So you're looking at around about 25 odd years of electromechanical kind of dominance. There may have been sort of offshoots of the Seeburg one that other people produced, but they're not widely documented. So Seeburg was pretty much the daddy of that one. It wasn't until 1972 that the market saw the return of a bona fide light gun technology with, anyone want to guess? An old school home console.
Atari 2600.
Nope.
The ColecoVision.
Nope. It's deal. Save the day.
Is it something really obvious?
It's it's a well-known console. Old school console. 72, remember?
72.
Shall I tell you?
Go on then, mate. I can't.
Magnavox Odyssey.
The Magnavox.
And they produced a light gun accessory to their video game console. So the game was called Shooting Gallery and featured what looks like a full-size realistic rifle. As an interesting side note, which company was heavily involved in the development of this piece of hardware and the game that went with it? Anybody know?
Ooh, who would have?
Some say they're quite well known.
Nintendo?
Nintendo. It was Nintendo. At the time, they were a toy manufacturer, but they co-produced the Odyssey light gun and went on to produce a range of light-sensitive toys, which they called ray guns. So they weren't light gun games, but they were toy guns essentially that were used light in various different ways. So this light gun attachment from Magnavox and Nintendo was significant for two reasons. So firstly, it heralded the return of a gaming peripheral that actually was a light gun and not an electromechanical device dressed up. All right. Which had dominated the market so far. This one used a white light sensor in the barrel of the gun, which pick up the dots on the screen and score a hit if the trigger was pulled by the player when in line with one of those dots. Okay, so again, for the time,
Wicked.
pretty impressive and pretty advanced. Yeah. Has anyone ever seen or played on anything similar like that? No. I'm assuming our experience starts a
little bit later. Yeah.
A little bit later. Oh, we've got lots to talk about then. So secondly, I think most importantly, it saw the release of the very first light gun setup that could be played in your home and not just in the arcade. Whereas before it was obviously big cabinets, stands for the gun, great big massive wires and everything. And this one was literally a one box solution into your Magnavox. And you could go shooting. Go shooting. So it's here, chaps, that we take the first step into a bit of a wider story of the light gun market as we typically understand it, and it begins with the Odyssey, okay, in 72. So unlike a lot of gaming releases and big hardware, the Odyssey light gun and games landed first in homes as opposed to the arcades, which is quite a big deal when you think about it, because obviously a lot of other stuff at the time was ports of cabinets, etc., and even sort of the old electromechanical stuff they turned into games as well. Light gun shooters not arriving until a whole 2 years later in 1974 in the arcades with Sega's balloon gun. Ever heard of that one?
Nope.
Pretty straightforward. Again, balloons on the screen, pop, shoot
the
job
balloon,
done.
yeah.
Atari's Quack
I have heard of that.
with an exclamation mark, and from Wild Gunman. Remember Wild Gunman? That's also in Back to the Future 2.
Well, yeah, because he's in the
retro cafe.
Yeah,
and he plays
yeah.
Wild Gunman.
Yeah. You have to use your hands.
That's a baby's toy.
Isn't that Elijah Wood as
Elijah
well?
Wood, yeah.
Yeah, it is. And also we've got one from Taito, which was Attack in 1976 as well. I think that was like a very early sort of iteration of kind of an Operation Wolf type game. So, but we'll come on to that shortly. So sadly, the reality was that the market was simply not ready, willing, or able to adopt the new style of light gun games, and they didn't get anywhere near to the success of their electromechanical predecessors. So they were still dominating the market. This meant less titles released and fewer cabinets made, whilst the more familiar and varied button and joystick cabinets continued to grow with the likes of Space Race, Breakout, Space Invaders, and Asteroids vacuuming up everyone's hard-earned coins. As we all know, absolute mammoth amount of money must have gone through those machines back in the day. So as we know, both arcade and home titles were being churned out en masse in the late 70s and into the early 80s of those types of games anyway. So much so, as we probably already know, but for those listeners that don't, what happened in 1983?
That was
The
the
Nintendo
video game
Entertainment-
crash, wasn't it?
Oh, the game
Yes,
crash.
it was. Yeah.
Well, in
Pete's got
America,
it.
yeah.
The industry saw an almost complete collapse due to a flooding of the market with poor quality consoles and games released with fewer and fewer people purchasing them in favour of the new and versatile home PCs, such as the Commodore 64 and the Speccy, of course. This shift has since been labelled the video game crash of 1983, as many listeners already know. So worth a read if you fancy a trip down that rabbit hole, because very interesting how it all kind of happened. And
Yeah, a lot of people point it in like Atari's direction.
They blame
and
And E.T. as well,
E.T.
yeah.
yes, they do.
It's a bit more to it than
We've
that.
had him on the show, Howard Scott Warshaw, haven't we?
Yes.
He's a good he's a good guest, and he takes it with a pinch of salt. It wasn't really his fault, was it?
No.
I think the book's actually called How I Destroyed the Game Industry. Or
That's
something.
it, yeah.
He's laughing about it now, but yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think there were a lot more factors to it.
Yeah.
than simply ET. So I'd certainly wear anyway. Gets a lot more flack than maybe it should. But there we go. Anyway, we're going to pick things up in January of '84. So we're now catching up with with you guys.
Catching up with ourselves.
Finally, I feel.
With the release of the Nintendo VS system, which heralded their independent arrival on the arcade scene. So the cabinets featured mostly heavily adapted versions of what would later become the well-known NES or Famicom releases. The arcade itself only had a lifespan of 1 year in Japan, and it just didn't take off. The US, however, it sold 100,000 units and lived right up until 1992, when it was pretty much been forever then as a feature arcade cabinet, mainly because the technology moved so quickly. There was just so much more going on in the as we know, the games industry in the 80s and then the 90s was, the pace was unbelievable. Lucky for us though, Nintendo produced a light gun version of its arcade cabinet and released 2 games in 1984, which were, we've already said one of them,
Duck Hunt.
and remember the other one? Not quite as famous, but still pretty well known.
I want to say, is it a cowboy game? You shoot
Oh yes.
Gunsmoke.
No,
No, that's not.
it's
not right,
Hogan's
okay.
Alley.
Oh, yeah.
Hogan's Alley. It's basically just a shooting range. You get these people pop up in front of you. One of them or two of them are people you need to shoot, and the other one isn't. Obviously, if you shoot the one, it's like you lose.
Yeah.
So fairly straightforward, but again, relatively sort of advanced for the home console. The runaway success, however, would come from the home console market, with Duck Hunt, of course, being the light gun title on the NES of the day. Everyone remembers the bundle, don't they? You must have seen it, even if you didn't have one. You
The
remember.
Zapper. Yeah.
Oh, the Zapper.
The Zapper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you remember the box with the little duck flying across
Yeah,
and the picture
yeah.
of the gun and
Yeah.
massive marketing coup for NES, for Nintendo. A massive success for them as well. It was bundled with the console for sale when it launched in October of 1985, along with Super Mario Brothers as well. Double whammy. Double
so
whammy.
much
on that
fun
cartridge.
in that pack.
I'm assuming then Sega didn't trademark Duck Hunt? Because they made that first game.
So I couldn't actually find an awful lot of information about that. I think because it was two wildly different games and genres, I think maybe, and obviously because of the Sega one was like late 60s, and because Nintendo was so massive when they released that title, they just steamrolled the market. So they may have felt we never need to say anything, but there we go. I don't know the legalities of that one. So if you want to go and have a look that one up,
Trademarks are like 10 years, are they? Is that came out for?
Because you have to renew them, don't you?
You have to renew them. So I just wonder if they either didn't bother trademarking Duck Hunt, because Nintendo would have checked. Oh my god,
the Sega of
Nintendo definitely would have checked.
The Sega of the 80s was quite a lot different to the Sega of the 60s as well, wasn't it? In terms of what they were focused on. So
no, that's a good point. Absolutely.
Can you imagine if the Sega lawyers listening right now going, "Oh yeah, we can make some money out of this"?
Hang on, Duck Hunt. What's this game Duck Hunt that was released 40 years ago? Absolutely. So that's what they how they went about doing it. They included in the box, as we said, the Duck Hunt Super Mario Brothers, obviously the console, the Zapper light gun, and an extra controller.
Those were the days. Those were the days.
One-stop shop for entertainment. You know, anyone ever have one? Play one around a mate's house? Any sort of memories? Give me what was your impressions when you? I mean, if you can remember back that far.
I can. I did have a friend. Kind of. It was more of my mum's friend, and this kid. We just hanged out. He had an NES or a NES, and we were playing lots of Mario games, and he had Duck Hunt, and I was quite impressed actually. It's just fun shooting stuff on a screen, isn't it?
Oh, without doubt.
Yeah, it's just a quality game. It's well done. It makes me laugh that you can get an amiibo with the dog and holding the ducks.
Yeah, oh, of course.
I don't actually own that amiibo, but I kind of wanted because I'm like, are they actually friends now? I think they might be.
The dog and the duck.
Yeah, no, my cousin had a NES when we were kids, and I definitely remember playing that. The thing is, we'll talk about is the light guns were so accurate. And it was such a, you literally just plugged it in. That was it. You didn't need to stick a box on the TV or anything like that. It just worked off the flickering of the CRT. It's just brilliant.
As I've said before, simplicity is the homework of genius.
Yeah.
But it really was. And it was just such a cool thing rather than playing with the controller to have an actual Zapper gun in your hand, shooting ducks and stuff. And you could miss as well. This wasn't a case that it was like stupidly forgiving.
No.
Because I remember playing one, a very old friend of mine that I've known since I was about 8 years old. He had one when I first knew him, and he's like, look at this. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I'd never seen anything like that before. Do you know what I mean? Other than in an arcade, you know. So that was very cool to be able to, play that at home, essentially. So, Dill? I saw you nodding. Did you? What was your?
So yeah, one of my old primary school mates had a NES, and I did have a go at that, but that was after I had my Master System.
Yeah,
and I already had, and I already had shooty games at home. But I don't know if you're going to talk about the Master System.
Same.
And we shall not trample on the history of the Master System.
Please do not.
No, well, I certainly won't because I had one, and I loved it like a child. So there we go. So on to some numbers, or a number. And as per usual, as we know, and I always think of Keith when I say this because I seem to remember you struggle with sales numbers and figures.
Sometimes, it's hard to find information sometimes.
God, it's hard to find accurate.
Yeah.
Consistent information.
It's just not as publicised back then as it is now.
But there's so many gaps. Like you'll get a number for something, for one console or peripheral, and then nothing for anything else. So anyway, I couldn't find an exact number of sales for the Zapper. Now I think there's a good reason for that, because of course it was heavily bundled with the unit, and I'd imagine the people buying it separately were far less than buying the bundle itself. Maybe, I don't know, but we'll see. We can gauge its volume by way of the NES unit sales though, and because Nintendo chose to bundle up the Zapper for a long time with the console upon launch, so a significant amount of the 61.91 million NES units that sold worldwide, which is a shocking number. Unbelievable. It's therefore safe to say that quite a few households had the Nintendo Zapper.
At least half. You'd say at least half, because the only other bundles I remember are just the standard one that just had Mario Brothers, didn't it? I think.
Correct.
Then later you had like the ones I think they were bundled with the sequels potentially.
And Mario Brothers 3 they had, didn't they?
Yeah.
There was one with the robot
one.
Yeah.
And that's it. And those ones weren't as popular as that one. That would have easily been the most popular one.
I think if you probably ask a bunch of people who had those consoles at the time, they would say the bundled with the Zapper, because it was such an iconic piece of marketing as well. The design on the box. So for the NES, there were actually 18 games in total to play with the Zapper. Not all of them were licensed. There are a couple that weren't. Does anybody want to fire a couple out if they know any? Obviously, we've had Duck Hunt at Hogan's Alley.
Ooh, now you're asking.
Wild Gunman we've had.
Did Gumshoe use the...
Yes!
Yeah.
Dylan!
There you go. Boom.
Oh, there's a few sweets
That's
for
thanks
you.
to
Gumshoe.
Andy. That's thanks to UK Nesboy because he reviewed that, and obviously I edit everything on the side. I was like, oh, I haven't heard of this, but
You
it sounds
shouldn't have said that. You should have just gone,
hey, I'm very humble.
Giving credit where credit's due.
I'm very humble, but thanks to him, I knew about that one. I think he did another one as well, another Zapper game. Can't think of
UK
it.
Nesboy for the win on Gumshoe.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Gumshoe.
We've got a few. Freedom Force, Barker Bill's Trick Shooting, Gumshoe, Wild Gunman, To the Earth, Operation Wolf,
Operation Wolf, yeah.
Laser Invasion, Mechanized Attack, Shooting Range, Gotcha the Sport, The Lone Ranger, The Adventures of Bayou Billy, Track and Field 2, don't ask. Yeah, believe it or not.
Bayou Billy wasn't... So that had light gun levels, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, because it was some of it was a side-scrolling beat 'em up.
Correct.
I think there was driving bits in it as well.
And shooting.
Yeah.
So there you go. Because you don't realise it. You think, they're just light gun games, but there's games that actually incorporated other parts as well as the shooting. Track and Field 2, where there, again, was an event where you could do the shooting.
Yeah.
Daydreaming Davy, Baby Boomer, and Chiller. Now, as seriously, this is one thing to go away and look up, all right? Because you'll never be quite the same afterwards. Baby Boomer is hilarious. It's essentially just there's a baby crawling across the screen, like Lemmings. Imagine Lemmings. Yeah. You can't stop the Lemmings per se, but you have to put things. You have to basically protect them and stuff like that. So you have to shoot threats to stop them getting the baby.
You have to protect the baby, right?
So, but the most bat turd crazy one of the lot is Chiller, which is essentially like this dungeon where people are hung up and you have to shoot the body parts.
I've seen this. That was an arcade game first, wasn't it?
Correct.
Yeah,
and it was
a bit controversial, I think.
A bit, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite graphic for the day.
Very.
Yeah.
And it caused all sorts of uproar.
Yeah.
It's well worth looking at if you want a bit of video game history for that one. Controversy as well. Yeah. Plenty of it. Because, it ruffled a few feathers. It's and it is, for an 8-bit, it's pretty damn graphic.
Yeah.
So there we have it. The first console to truly embrace the light gun offering. Yes, we've got the Magnavox Odyssey, but it was just the one game. I think, again, and people are going to probably shoot me down. They're shouting at their headphones as we speak. There might have been one or two other Odyssey titles, but I don't necessarily think they were fully licensed again with the whole, So that's what we're going to go with. But yeah, there were some unlicensed NES ones as well we've just spoken about. So Chiller and Lone Ranger were absolute stinkers and ones that barely anyone remembers, but they existed nonetheless, so there we go. So as we slide gracefully into the late 80s, so we've definitely caught up now, chaps. Light gun arcades were still growing in the likes of Taito's Operation Wolf, which we've already mentioned on the NES. Now was a massive hit at the arcades, military-themed, rail-based shooter. And it had a sequel, Operation Thunderbolt, as well. We had one from Sega, which was called Line of Fire. And that continued the military theme as well and mirrored the former's success at the arcade. The latter part of the decade also saw, believe it or not, the Amstrad CPC, the Specky, and the C64 get light gun releases as well.
So I've never seen any of those light guns.
I have, yeah. My uncle, I never had it, but my uncle, when we had the Spectrum, he had a Spectrum as well, and he bought the light gun to our house once, and I think he had a James Bond game. I think there's a bundle with it, the Spectrum and a James Bond Zap, and I can't remember what the gun's called, but it was pretty cool, I really enjoyed playing it, and it felt different, just having a control in your hand. It's not a bad game, that James Bond game, and I know my wife, Becca, when she was growing up, she had a Commodore 64, and I think she had a game called Gangster, where you had to shoot. I think it's like the Dick Tracy kind of style game. I've never seen that particular game, but she had very good fond memories of it. So.
Awesome. Deal?
Are you skipping past the 80s now to the next bit? Or
we're still in the 80s, so
Master System,
jump in.
First thing I would say is that Operation Wolf is amazing. I remember borrowing that. I think I did we swap games with kids at school. I think I just can't remember who I swapped it with. Just seeing that and all the soldiers diving around and everything. And I tried it just as a laugh. I tried it with the control pad as well. And I was like, no, back to the gun. But it did. My Master System, as I've regaled this podcast with before, had Safari Hunt built into it. And that was a power base that would have been 88. I think they released that. And so don't that's on your notes. But anyway, Safari Hunt.
No, you're bang on.
It basically was a rip-off of Duck Hunt, but take it.
That's all right. They ripped off the bear. Nintendo ripped off the name.
You shot
so then Sega were like, we're getting
We're going to get
hunt
some.
game.
And it was just it was just a bit like Duck Hunt. It's the same 3 levels like on a loop. And they just get quicker and quicker and quicker. So the animals
Well,
get
they
quicker
all
and
ripped
quicker
off
and
Shoot the Bear because Seaberg did that one.
Yeah,
So,
Shoot the bear.
so they're all ripping off each other. But
yeah. So that's the 80s.
But yeah, that was my first light gun, the light phaser.
That's what it's called.
The light phaser, yeah,
Light
Sega
phaser.
light phaser. Yeah. And I had a game called Wanted.
I've
Did you
heard
play
of it.
Wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the one? Yeah,
There's
cowboy
Cowboy
one
one.
with that
Cowboy
pop
one.
up and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
nice. Well, I mean, to be fair, military and Old West heavily featured, obviously, because
An Operation Wolf arcade cabinet because they were Uzis, weren't they?
They
were
picture
yes,
it.
they were, and they had the little button on the side.
Yeah, for the grenades.
Yep.
Amazing.
But yeah,
So good.
So obviously, I think it's hard to mention console or even a home PC at those times and not bump into a light gun, which is strange. Because again, we've said, "Oh, I didn't know that the Specky had a light gun. Oh, I didn't know the Amstrad. I didn't know the Amstrad had a light gun. I had an Amstrad. I'm a massive Amstrad fan. No idea, not a clue. Yeah, but what we've got to remember is the titles that released were often either ports, or they were just redressed versions of other games, etc. So I would imagine there was an awful lot of this, dare we say, plagiarism going on.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And certainly with some of the unlicensed titles as well.
Wasn't there a Rambo game for the Master System that was also a light gun game?
I think
Did
it was.
it?
I'm
No, I
sure
think
there's
it
two. There was 2 Rambo games. There was the overhead scrolling one,
Commando style game.
yes, which I had, which was really good. But I'm sure there was I don't know if it was Rambo 3. I'm sure it was a light gun game on the Master System. Sure of it.
I recently played the
Let's,
new Rambo arcade shoot in Heart Gaming, and they got clips of the movie.
Yes,
It
I
doesn't
played that a
follow-
few years back.
Yeah,
I think
very
in
good.
Brighton or somewhere. Yeah.
It's really good. It
It's
doesn't
really
follow
cool.
the movie in the right order, but I love it. It's so
Hold
cool.
that thought.
Oh, sorry.
No, you carry on, crack on. But but this is good. This is the thing. It's all good hearing about all stuff coming out the woodwork because we've all got various experiences of light gun games and stuff like that. But yeah, so there were light guns for all of those various different platforms. And again, we've said there were mostly additional ports of already released games for the NES, or there were third-party attempts which didn't sell very well. In short, there weren't many games available for those platforms. Okay, really, sort of notable releases anyway.
Rambo 3. Yeah, it was
you.
So you had Rambo and Rambo 3, and Rambo 3 was a light gun.
Thank you to our
So I thought
dictionary corner over there, our verification
I
corner.
to check in case I was
Stato.
making.
Independent adjudicator.
You know what Stato means? Yeah, go on. You're as old as us, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Is it one of your "if you know, you know" sections? You're doing that all over Facebook these days, aren't you? People type a random comment. Adrian just goes, "If you know, if you know, you know."
Yeah. I'm an annoying
Every 5
person.
minutes.
I'm just an annoying person, yeah.
No, we like no, not annoying. Anyway, so with all of that kind of early history and the first big breakthrough into the market from the NES that we've spoken about, and also from the Master System as well, which we'll talk a little bit more about in terms of the hardware, we now find ourselves at a bit of a fork in the road. To the left, we have the journey that takes us through the light gun hardware from all the major manufacturers, when they released and what consoles they played on. We'll have a dip our toe into that if you like. Or to the right, we have another journey, which is the stacks of titles released that enabled the use of said light guns, within which are games that we all know and love, and some that either nobody knows or nobody loves, to be fair. My question to you then, fellas, is which road shall we take?
Well, I think we should ask the listeners. Shout left or shout right?
Shout now! Left! Okay, all right.
That was Jag 515 A B C D 3.
I said right. Not left.
Shouting at me now, yeah. So, I'm not going to listen to any of you and take us on a crazy taxi-type ride down each of the roads, all right? We'll start with the left, though. Starting with... So, we're going to go with examples now of the hardware, all right? We're actually going to look at the hardware because it was a bit of a minefield, shall we say. We've got some very good, some very bad, and some horrendously ugly, all right? We actually kick off...
You trademarked that, didn't you?
Yeah.
He should do, because he keeps saying it. We're going to kick off in 1986, and I think Keith's just mentioned this one, with the Sega
Light phaser.
Phaser.
Yeah.
Blazer. Whatever the...
Blazer.
Fitness Consigliere Michelle. No, it's not that. We're not going to do a dodgeball tie. And Sega's video game Firearm offering for the mighty Master System.
Yes.
So unlike the bright orange and the pastel grey of the NES Zapper, The phaser was what colour?
Sleek black.
Black.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, it's a very dark grey, but okay, I'll give you black. It's very dark grey.
It was black. It's the same colour as the console.
It's a very, very, very dark grey.
Okay, so we don't want to start a punch up here.
Carry on.
It was a very dark tone, shall we say? Yeah.
I broke my first one actually. Sega were very good. I just because obviously the lens in it and stuff, the alignment goes, and I was like, oh. So then my dad phoned up Sega.
Sorry, what were you?
I was like, and then my dad phoned up Sega, and they were like, all right, send it to us with a tenner. I think which is like cheaper than the thing would have been, and then they sent me a new one.
Oh.
Nice.
Okay, that's not too bad.
So it was nice. It came in a nice box and everything, because obviously my previous one just came with the thing. I had like a nice light phaser box. I was like, ooh, it's nice.
Very nice. It was also quite pointy.
Very pointy.
Yeah.
And it had a rock solid square blocky handle, which I think was sort of divided opinion, but some loved it, some didn't. What was interesting about this was that for some reason, every single shot you took, and I don't know, I'm going on independent reviews here, went slightly to the right of where you aimed.
Because they probably had the one that the first maybe the first generation of them were a bit faulty. But I had a good one straight down the middle, mate.
So you got the replacement.
Yeah,
but they just didn't say there was a problem, so they went, I'll give him a new one and he'll be quiet.
There you go.
And it made sort of targeting and hitting things on the screen a little bit tougher than maybe it should have been. Had it not been for the fact that the games on the Master System were apparently extremely forgiving.
Okay.
So
we had big areas.
the hitboxes were massive, which is good. But there we go. A year later than that, we had an Atari release. Atari light gun. What was it?
For what console? Or maybe it was it the Atari ST? Or
Yeah, well, yes, it was. It was called the XG1. The XG1 was the light gun. Okay. Very similar to design to the phaser, funnily enough. Bit more going on there, although in beige.
Oh, man.
Atari, come on, mate, you're better than that.
Beige guns.
Beige. I mean, at least Sega was like, right, well, that's it. We're just going to make it, we'll just make it dark. We'll say black, but Dill's going to have a
very, very dark,
very
gunmetal grey. Shall we say?
Gunmetal
Yeah,
grey.
we'll agree on that. Okay,
the colour of the gun is a grey area by the looks of it. But it was a little bit more detailed. Sadly, that was about all she wrote in the plus column, as the trigger was far too light and the games required pinpoint accuracy, which the gun did not boast. Okay, so essentially the games kind of required very high levels of accuracy whilst the gun couldn't deliver high accuracy. So many say it was very tricky to use and slightly infuriating. So there we go. Chaps, late 80s, we talked Master System, we've talked Atari, we've talked a few other bits and pieces. Anything else? Of course, we talked the NES. We talked about the NES as well. But any more from the late 80s?
I think there was an Amiga one, but I never seen it in the flesh, or even I might be completely wrong there. But was there an Amiga?
There were a couple of Amiga guns actually. Now and again, I think they were mostly third-party ones. So the information and the kind of reliability of said information is sketchy at best. So I've chosen to kind of just mention Amiga a little bit later on, but I'm not going to go into any of the sort of official or unofficial light guns. So do feel free to go and have a look. So if there's any consoles that we're talking about...
Well, obviously the Mega Drive came out in late 80s. Was it 80s?
Oh, that's true, but what you're about to mention wasn't until a few years later.
So yes. Scratch that.
Listen,
I'll hold him back for you.
This is the problem. This is the problem. You see, there's so much to talk about. We've just done a whole bunch of stuff late 80s. We're going to have to move on because we'll be here for days otherwise.
Yeah,
we're going to have to move just tiptoe into the 90s. Okay, and it saw Nintendo and Sega both wading in again with their new light gun offerings, and they were eye openers, shall we say? Nintendo's attempt from 1992 was called what?
The Super Scope. Yeah.
The Super Scope.
Oh man, I tried it.
Did you?
You know, I spoke to my cousins in the past, and they both had this NES. Do you remember that story? They both had their own copy of Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
They didn't particularly get along.
So rich people.
Rich.
I've heard. Oh, blimey! I shouldn't really say this. I've heard they don't ever see each other anymore. They're just.
See, and if they'd been made to share a console, maybe they'd be much closer.
But I do remember going over. I'm not going to say the cousin's name, or the two cousins, but I went there once, and I like playing their SNES, like Mortal Kombat and whatnot. But once. This is a ridiculous thing. It's like a big tube pipe thing.
Yeah.
But it's like, look what I got. I've got what's it called again? The
Super Scope.
Check out the Super. I can't remember what game he had in it.
I don't think there was many released.
No,
I imagine you're going to go into that. But it was really...
When you rattle off the games, it might come to me. But I remember thinking, this thing is clunky, weird, and I wasn't the biggest fan, but it's still pretty fun.
I've never played one. Could you only hold it in that position? Or were there other ways of playing
That's what my cousin said. You had to put it at your shoulder.
Oh, right. I don't know. Have you Have you ever used
because
one?
I think
Can
if
you hold it
put
in a different?
like, in front of you, I think
You
it's too
can.
far away.
Oh,
Then you
can't
kind of have to look
Right.
through the thing.
This is all very valid feedback, gentlemen, because this is exactly echoing what everyone else says. It was essentially a grey plastic bazooka designed to mimic that from the Terminator 2 film. Okay, at 3 feet in length and requiring 6 AA batteries to power. This thing was a monstrosity of epic proportions. Okay,
3 feet long.
now the funny thing is the scope is tiny, so you've got this enormous gargantuan bazooka and a tiny scope. The shoulder rest would carve your arm into oblivion, and the accuracy was quite a lot less than pinpoint. Okay, the funniest part of the Nintendo Super Scope, and this is I can't believe this, but it's absolutely true. The Terminator 2 game for the SNES explicitly tells the user not to use the gun,
But that's a gun game.
as calibrating it will prevent you from hitting all parts of the screen.
Oh my god!
So
But that's a gun game.
So let's just rewind a few sentences. Yeah, the T2 game was released for the SNES.
Yeah.
Okay, the gun, the Super Scope, was released because it mimicked the bazooka from T2. But they told you specifically not to use it for the T2 game.
What happens? It'd be like Gremlins. What happens if you do use the game? Ooh.
Well, it says here,
won't hit anything.
if you used it and calibrated it in the game, you're not going to be able to hit all parts of the screen. So you're going to only hit, I don't know what the percentage
Like a
would
small
be.
percentage. So you're not going to get past the first
I was
level.
gonna say,
are
it
you?
wasn't Terminator. I would have remembered that. It wasn't Terminator I played at my cousin's house. Any more games?
I'll come on to the games. I'll come on. He's so impatient, and he goes,
But the
Like
games
that,
are the
man.
second road, aren't they?
we're parking that.
Yeah,
the
that's
games
all.
are the
To the
second
right.
road. Don't worry, we're going to bring it together in one glorious crescendo. Don't worry about it. But have you ever heard of anything so daft in all your life?
No.
Well, we're going to model it on that. It's going to look like this. We'll release it, but you can't use it in that game. Brilliant.
But whose fault was that though?
Ooh.
Was it because, and if I'm remembering this wrong, correct me, but I believe our friends at Acclaim bought the T2
I think,
game
yeah,
home.
Claim or Pro, but I can't
Yeah,
remember.
and so maybe it was their fault. Maybe it wasn't
Yeah.
actually Nintendo's
Well,
kit that was to blame.
I
there.
mean, I'm quite happy to blame Acclaim for
Yeah, I mean-
a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
where there's blame, there's a claim.
Hey! Have you been injured by a Super Scope in 1992? Then you have a
I
claim.
can't believe we haven't used that before. Oh, where there's blame, there's a claim. There you go.
Oh dear. Well, as I say, there probably were a few claims of broken, frozen shoulders and stuff from this blooming thing. I tell you. But yeah, I just find that quite staggering.
Yeah.
But there we go. Released around the same time and just as monstrous and cumbersome was the Sega.
Menace.
And Adrian's got one with him, so we can
Really?
actually
Come
have
on.
a
Stretching,
live.
I've got it.
It's
Yes.
only two.
Look at that.
It's only
Oh,
2
you've got-
feet long.
It's shorter.
Is that all the parts? Is that all the parts? I think yes, isn't it? Yeah.
No, well,
Or is it missing
no,
something?
missing.
I had one, but I'm struggling to remember.
It's missing the back. I can't get it working because it's missing the bit where you put the back of the batteries.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
So it doesn't
yeah.
work, unfortunately.
Oh.
But this is legit my menace as a kid.
Oh,
we're gonna stick this
Hey,
on all
can
the
I hold
socials.
it?
Amazing.
So if you listen to it right now, look at the pod
amazing.
launch.
How would you describe it,
pics.
Steve? This particular weapon.
I mean, it's not exactly sleek, is it? It's like a handgun, but it's also got binoculars attached to the top, and it's also got a big shoulder rest thing.
it's pretty nasty looking, isn't it?
And
to
you
be
could configure it in different ways, can't you? Because you can take this bit off the back, and you can.
Well, whilst you're holding it there, it's
Yeah.
interesting because they actually had names for the certain components.
They didn't.
They did.
Oh, go
so
on.
you've got multiple parts with a part called the stabilizer. Yeah.
So that's this bit.
we assume
at
it's
the back.
that bit
Okay.
there. And binocular mode.
Binocular mode. Yeah, that's self-explanatory.
Which is, again, pretty self-explanatory. But you also, now in addition to this, Keith is modelling it very nicely there for us. You also had to have a large infrared box on top of the TV.
I was about to ask because I never played
Yes.
the Super Scope. Did that have similar, or was that just a plug and play thing?
So
Because
I believe-
I remember
I
this
think
little
that-
box that you had for the
I'm
Menacer.
pretty sure they both had it. So
Okay.
I believe the Sega one was a chunkier iteration.
Yeah, it was quite. Yeah,
So,
it was quite a
How did the
solid
tech get
little
worse?
box.
Because the phaser and the
It got more
zapper, you just plug
cumbersome.
them in.
Yeah, who knows?
Do you want to hear how I got the gun?
Go for it.
Because my dad doesn't like video games. He's never really interested. It's not his thing. And he's I grew up in video games, but my dad would never take any notice. Apart from the only thing he found very interesting was odd peripherals. So I remember we for the Amiga, I think I mentioned it before. We were in, I think it was in Curry's or whatever, but wherever it was back then. And they had these flight simulator sticks, and it was for the Amiga. And my dad was like, "Oh my word, you can actually fly a proper legit, aeroplane on the Amiga." I'm like, yeah. And I showed him the latest game. I think it was called B-14 Flying Fortress, which got kind of mixed reviews, but it was a World War II flight sim.
Yeah.
So my dad was like, "Oh, I wouldn't mind actually flying this aeroplane." So I kind of persuaded him to buy it. It's like, well, let's get it. He actually paid good money for this flight stick and the game, probably about 50 or 60 quid in total for both of them, or maybe a bit more actually. Yeah. And I remembered a few years later, I was like, the Menacer's just come out. My dad likes weird things. Mm-hmm. So I said, Dad, look,
I can see where this is going.
Dad, look, this weird for the Mega Drive, which you had for a few years now, maybe a couple of years, I don't know. I just said, look, you can actually get a legit gun for it and you can shoot things. And I was like, I think I persuaded my dad to get it. He was like, that'd be cool, wouldn't it?
Well done.
Nicely done.
So I used my dad.
So you're an awesome salesman as well.
Yeah. I just remembered. Yeah, if I'm getting this gun, I need my dad.
Mate, that is...
I got it one Christmas. And I remember being really excited about it, and then being incredibly disappointed.
The fantasy was
disappointing.
Not lived up to.
It does work with Terminator 2.
Hey!
Because when it came out, that was what Sega used to push it, was to heavily kind of advertise the T2 game. And
so Nintendo dropped the ball.
It came with 6 cartridges, didn't it?
Called... unforgettable games.
And I wanted to do back of the box, but it's impossible.
It's a very tiny print. I don't know why it's so small. Let me try.
Keep trying, and I've ripped it as well. It's hard to read.
Which one's the English one?
It's that small.
Must read French instructions.
Okay. Rockman Zone. Train to be a G-man and pick out the bad guys before they pick you out.
Train to be a G-man.
Space Station Defender. Defend your lunar station from waves of machine gun toting aliens. That the rip goes across there. I can't read that one. Whack ball. Grab control and something because it's ripped there as well. Pest control. Can you exterminate the pizza-loving bugs?
Remember pest control.
Yeah, you have to shoot the bugs before they eat all your pizza and your picnic food.
No, not the pizza.
But the most famous game,
Ready Aim Tomatoes.
That's it. Which is
a toe jab and hole game.
Which actually the two best games in my opinion were Ready Aim Tomato, which was quite fun, and also Pest Control. Mm-hmm. They're the two ones I used to play the most. But I agree, Keith. It was a little bit of a underwhelming.
It was underwhelming.
Yeah. It was a bit annoying.
Bundle. Yeah, it was hard to calibrate as well. That box. I mean, I don't know how the technology worked and why it couldn't just use the flashing of the CRT. I don't know.
It was grimacing.
Why?
TVs just.
It didn't work that well. And I used to just use the handgun bit because the rest of it was so cumbersome. The binoculars were pointless. And
did you have the Terminator game as well then?
I didn't have it. I rented it and played it with that, but I cannot remember playing a single other game with that apart from the 6 on the cartridge.
We've had the
T2.
man that was involved in this, wasn't it, on our pod? Blimey, my brain's gone to mush.
Yes, I don't remember his name.
Sorry. So he was a bit of a Sega guy, and he worked on a lot of games, including the Menacer. Didn't sell very well, he said.
I've got a feeling when we got it, it had probably been discounted quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I remember that there was like a picture of a cool kid on the box using it with his like cap on backwards, and
he looked cool.
It's the same story with several other light guns, but we'll come on to that. Yeah,
I just remember. I think
no software support.
I think on Lemon, if you played Lemons on the SNES, I think if you had your Super Scope bazooka thingy, you could shoot lemons. I think that was like he put Mike Daly put an extra bit of.
I listened to the Mike Daly pod the other day, and you guys did chat about that.
He did reveal
there we
it, so.
go.
I love that. So play lemons with.
And we even referenced lemons earlier. So happy days. Yeah,
and maybe a bit of a spoiler as for a future podcast that I might do. So,
was that about Road Rash?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So where were we? So the Menacer, large infrared box on top of the telly, also required 6 batteries.
Yes,
although this time it was AAA's rather than AA's, but who's counting? It was reportedly more accurate than the Super Scope. That I don't know whether that's saying much.
I never used the Super
but it still felt heavy, clunky, and in many people's reviews, slightly unnecessary.
Do you know what? As well, that just looking at it again, the trigger was really unsatisfying. Like it didn't feel. It's just a button. It didn't feel like a trigger. It was just like click, click, click. Yeah. Sega.
Gosh.
Just not good enough.
No,
it's just not good enough. Can we save this apparent train wreck of a list so far?
Well,
we
somewhat.
You can. Because it's going in the mid-90s and you definitely can.
I can. I will certainly try for you. So next up is something called the Konami Justifier.
Oh, yeah.
From 1993, which was a sort of a Smith & Wesson style 6-shooter. Okay,
Came in
fantastic.
2 different shades, didn't it? Especially in the arcade.
And what were they?
Baby blue and bright pink.
The best. The best.
Just in case you felt like going to rob a bank with this plastic gun with a wire on the end of it, they had to make it blue and pink. Yeah, absolutely. So it boasts comfortable handling, excellent trigger response, and great looks. What's the problem then, you ask?
There's no problem.
That's
No
perfect.
problem. No, of course not.
Move on.
Well,
Did they break really easy?
they were compatible with just 2 games.
Oh.
I want to say Lethal Enforcer.
Yeah,
And I'm going to bet you can guess what games they were. That's one of them. What's it?
Enforcers, Mad Dog McCree.
No,
No?
Oh.
Oh.
Lethal Forces 2.
Hey.
Okay.
Unbelievable. So yeah, that was the Konami Justifier, and
Yeah.
it does look like a nice gun. Actually, to be fair, it's just a shame that
That did come out on the Mega Drive, didn't it? Or was it Mega CD?
I don't know. I don't know.
There was definitely
We'll have to
a
check that
home.
one.
There was definitely a
I know
home
they
version.
used it. Yeah, they used it in Spaced for that. There's a
Oh,
scene
nice
in
reference.
one of the
Yes.
episodes of Spaced
Yeah.
where he's going to point his pink pistol at the firing range. Obviously, you think he's going for a you know what, but then he comes back with the pink Lethal Enforcer's gun. I'm pretty sure.
it's such a
I'm
great bit of kit.
90% sure. Yeah.
it looks like such a serious, like well modelled gun, bright blue, which is great.
Yeah.
So did anybody know about the Philips light gun? No,
What, for the CDI, was it?
Yes.
No way.
1994. We've got Philips had a crack at the light gun market with their Peacekeeper revolver.
Peacekeeper.
Yeah.
Well, Darren had a CDI. Darren, if you're
Darren,
listening.
do you have a Peacekeeper?
There you are. Did I have a Peacekeeper? No, I certainly didn't. It attached to the CDI, albeit via a port on the back, apparently, that was very fiddly to actually plug in. So by the time you'd got the console all set up, you're all, your TV was there. Dylan's doing his Stevie Wonder impression over there, shaking his head.
So because I saw Darren recently, and I said, Darren, do you still have your CDI? He said, my room hasn't changed. My bedroom hasn't changed since the mid-90s. It probably is in there somewhere.
Whoa. Does his mum still live there?
Yes.
Whoa.
So his room has not changed, apparently. His old video cassettes and everything.
We need to break in there,
Mate, we need to raid it.
Yeah.
Talk afterwards. No, I'm only joking. But yeah, on the old Philips CDI with their Peacekeeper revolver, which to be fair, I don't think sounds that bad.
There was
Keith?
a 3DO one as well. Could you remember? Because the Demolition Man game.
Yeah, you had that for the Demolition Man game.
but I can't remember what it was called. Oh, he's looking at me.
No, I'm only joking. Yeah, there is.
What was it called?
I'll come to
You
that
got the
in a
name? Okay, cool.
I'll come to that in a minute. But the most frustrating thing about the Philips one was not least because it was a fiddly little port on the back that you had to find once the console was all set up and everything like that. There was a lot of other cables as well, and it basically just causes mass frustration, and the amount of cabling setting it up was nuts. It had 8 games in total available. Apparently it was quite accurate, but naturally failed to win a majority market share due to Philips' rather brief, shall we say, an underwhelming stint on the gaming scene.
Yes.
So yes, anyone who's got one, I'd imagine now, probably worth a few pounds.
Darren.
Yeah. Oh, Darren, we're coming to get you. Another big electronics company that Keith mentioned was
Philips. No,
Panasonic.
sorry, not Philips. Panasonic. You just said
Panasonic.
Philips, yeah. Panasonic.
Also 1994, and they released the American Game Gun for use with their console, the 3DO.
How original.
I know, absolutely.
Game
At least Philips came up with some sort of
Yeah.
Western-sounding, very similar in appearance to Konami's Justifier, and in a bright orange, boasted great accuracy, handling, and trigger response. Once again, though, one of the better guns thus far was short-lived, had only around 12 games in its library, and being attachment for a console that overall, again, didn't do very well. So we're seeing a bit of a pattern. Yeah. And thus far, even if you have a good gun and a reasonable console, you don't have many games, or you can have a good gun and a terrible console and still not many games. Yeah. So software support, I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, absolutely. So whilst we're on the subject of poorly selling consoles with excellent light gun peripherals, we have to talk about the Saturn.
Poorly selling.
Hey, what?
Since when is 9 million a low number?
How dare you? Well, we'll just get out the other console sales numbers, shall we?
Yeah, it's the best light gun.
No, we
best.
love a Saturn, don't we?
Yes,
We do
We
love
love
the
a
Saturn.
Saturn. Come on.
I have 2 of them. So
We
yeah.
love a Saturn.
You have
Sega's
two? I didn't know
awesome.
you had 2.
Yeah.
We just love Sega.
I think I've got
anyway.
2, 3.
And what was the sort of feature gun called?
So to us, it was the Virtua gun. I think in America, I think it was called the Sega Stunner because
Yes,
they have to give
exactly
things silly
right.
names. But yeah, the Virtua gun. and it is
very
my
cool.
favourite light gun.
So Keith's got the boxed one in front of us. Just walk us through the sort of design, everybody. Or Keith, what you got?
I've got a picture of a big blue gun on it, James.
Yes.
And what game's on the front? We'll
This
come
is
back
the
to it.
Virtua Cop 2 bundle. This wasn't the original one I got, but I had to bring this. I got this a few years ago. I remember getting this for Christmas. I think it must have been 97. And I was so excited.
I bet you
I
were
was
just
so excited because I
imploding.
love the arcade games and it worked so well. Because this is where, Dill, we went back to the simpler times. You plug this into the control port
There
of
you
the Saturn and it works.
Straight away.
And it is so accurate and it feels so good in your hand.
So, well, it looks like the handle and the rear end of the Enforcer, shall we say, and the front of a sort of a slightly bulky assault rifle. So it's quite chunky. It's quite a sort of a robust.
It is. Oh yeah,
item, isn't it?
It is.
And what's interesting about it is that it more closely mirrored arcade guns and those that would follow it later down the line, to be fair. And indeed, yes, it was the Stunner over in the US. The Stunner. Not to
Prefer
be
Virtua gun.
not to be confused with the famous wrestling maneuver. Dill,
I need to excuse myself
constant.
because I'm busting. But you guys carry on and then I'll come back.
Boomtown. Dylan has to
Dylan's
excuse
nickname-
himself.
Dylan's nickname, the Stunner.
I need to go and point the pink pistol over.
And there's me worried about
is
lowering the
live
tone with some of those arcade game names earlier, and he goes and pulls that one out. Hey, excuse the pun.
Yeah. So the Virtua gun that we got, I assume it's the same in America. Oh no, actually, I don't know if you've got this in your notes. So we got a bright blue one.
Yep,
In America, I think it was kind of bright orange,
correct.
and in Japan, if you want to look realistic, you can buy yourself a nice black one.
Yes, you can. They were
Yeah,
I don't
black,
think- I
not dark grey.
No, it's
not
not
very,
dark grey,
very dark
Dill.
grey.
You can't argue with
He
me
can't
'cause
argue.
he's
He's
in
in
the
the loo.
toilet.
Yeah, but no, you're right. There were a few different colour iterations of. But yeah, it's a great looking gun. It handles really well.
It looks awesome.
Very sort of highly held in high regard.
Yeah,
and for those
it was super accurate as well.
Yeah, and for those in the know about these sort of types of light guns, this offering gets recognised as one of the best there was, to be fair. Slightly weightier
Agree.
than others. And in orange, which was the US one, obviously blue one we got here, and the gun was staggeringly accurate.
Yeah, well,
apparently.
it was brilliant. And again,
very
and all you
accurate.
did was plug it in. That was it. There was no
Plug and play.
Yeah, calibrate it in the game, and away you go.
Again, considered to be well built, moulded well to your hand as well, and made it one of the best guns ever put out to market. It also had some great titles available to use on it, but we're going to come back to that
Okey
a
doke.
bit later on. Don't worry, we'll have the opportunity to talk about it. And he's even got the look at this.
It looks
Oh yeah, I
quality.
didn't just bring the box.
He's
I
showing
I had
off
to get
now.
it out. I'm not showing off, but you got
Oh no, go show off.
got to feel it. Go on, James.
I'm holding.
there you go.
I'm now holding the Stunner / Virtua gun, and I'll tell you what, it does have a bulky handle to it,
It does.
and it's got a nice click. Oh.
See, a real trigger, not like the blimmin' medicine.
Medicine.
Wait, the medicine. Take your medicine.
I'm going to click the trigger for the
Oh,
Menacer.
okay, go on.
Right, that was the Menacer. Do it once more, close to the
Listen
mic.
carefully.
Right, that's the Menacer click. Now for the Virtua gun / Stunner.
Oh, that's way
There's
better.
no contest.
on.
There's no
Come
contest. There's no contest. So we're absolutely spot on with that one in terms of the build,
Yes.
the accuracy,
Oh.
the ease of use,
Absolutely love
the
it.
look. It's got it all.
Yeah.
It's got it all. So yeah, it's held in very, very high regard, and we're going to talk about some of the games in a bit.
Nice.
So hold that point. All right, I'm going to rattle off 4 in very quick succession now, and this was from another console. And see if you can guess which one it was. So we've got the Naki Lunar Grey, we've got the Namco Guncon, we've got the Blaze Scorpion, and we've got another Konami Justifier, all compatible with
The PlayStation 1.
the PS1, the PlayStation. The technical
The
term
Sony
is the PlayStation,
PlayStation.
because the PS1
Yeah.
obviously came about after. You know, the name came about afterwards, didn't it? So the PlayStation, and all released between 96 and 97. So the Justifier was simply a reload of the earlier model, only worse apparently. The Naki came with a laser sight attachment, which didn't work. And wasn't very
okay.
accurate. However, the Blaze Scorpion, I had one of these, which was absolutely brilliant, was like a silver sort of Walther PPK style. You know, like
I've
a little,
seen
little
it.
James Bond gun.
I've seen it.
It was amazingly accurate, worked with every single PlayStation light gun title made, which made it a huge favourite, of course. And I had one when I started uni as well, which was in, I think, 2000.
Nice.
And I bought it just before then, and I was like, I need to get myself a light gun, etc. Oh, it was brilliant. It was quite small, it was quite lightweight, so it didn't have sort of the chunk of the Virtua gun, but it was something about it that was just very sort of easy and nice to use. So that's my experience of that one. But it's a good looking little gun as well. The crown, however, belongs to the Namco Gun Con, which Keith's also got as well.
Yeah. Not boxed, sadly, but
how dare you?
That's a great looking gun as well. I had that for the PlayStation as well. I've lost it since. I don't know where it is, but the game that really jumped out for me playing with that thing was Time Crisis.
Of course.
Legendary game. Yeah, I had that gun. It's great.
I mean, in the arcade, it was glorious because obviously the top. What's this bit of a gun called? I'm not an expert. But this bit that recoils when you in an arcade version is that just the barrel?
What the arcade bit is? It's like it's the recoil something or other. The recoil feedback. Or
everyone knows what I mean. But in the arcade, it was amazing.
Yeah, that made it, didn't it?
Yeah,
like when you press the trigger and the gun recoiled.
Oh, so good. But again, this worked really well at home. This was a bit more complicated because you had to plug in the video input into the back of the PS1 and plug it into a controller port. So you have a bit of an ungainly wire sort of dangling around the back of it. But it worked really well. Again, super accurate.
Well, we'll put it down. We'll put it sort of alongside the slightly bulkier designed gun, because certainly compared to like the Blaze one that I had, much bulkier.
Yeah,
you had the reload side button as well.
Yeah,
very good accuracy again, and featured the extra wire, as we've already mentioned, that went into the TV's video jack to tell the game exactly where you were aiming on the screen, which is quite clever. So an extra cable
to boost accuracy a bit. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think we put up with it.
We can live with it. Yeah.
Only drawback with this great bit of kit that it was only compatible with games which had been designed with the GunCon feature.
Right, okay.
Which was obviously far fewer than the total light gun library for the PS.
So I assume that was only Namco games, was it? Or
I believe so.
Yeah.
There may have been like one or two others. Obviously, feel free to pick us up on that.
Okay.
But yeah, the library in total, you could play with certain other guns, but you had to have a GunCon game to use the GunCon gun. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know whether it's specifically to do with the video input. I'd imagine it probably was.
Yeah, probably.
And maybe without that, you basically just couldn't use the gun. Over on the dark side of the force with Sega, we love you, Sega. Dreamcast had a collection of light gun games to choose from, or light guns. Sorry, we're on the hardware still. Give myself a slap. To choose from, including the Mad Catz Dream Blaster. Remember that one? The Interact Starfire Light Blaster, and the Pelican Stinger.
See, and there wasn't actually an official Sega light gun, was there?
Nope. It was all third-party stuff. But they were
you've got like one of the best light gun arcade conversions ever.
Yep.
That we'll talk about in a minute. And no light gun.
It does beg the question, doesn't it? It does beg the question. So yeah, you got to wonder why. I mean, obviously the third parties were all over it. You know, they were making guns left, right, and centre. Of course they were. You know, cashing in on it. And the first one, which was the first two, sorry, the Dream Blaster and the Starfire was 1999.
Okay.
And the Pelican Stinger was 2001. So a little bit of a gap there. All of them review wise, generally average.
Okay. I've never actually used one. To be honest. Did you? No, because you owned one at the time, didn't you?
I had a Dreamcast, but never a gun for it.
Yeah, no, I can't say I have. To be fair, I mean my Dreamcast kind of experience is minimal. Okay. So I need to move in your house for a little while and play some Dreamcast, because I just haven't hardly sort of touched it. But yeah, all apparently reviewed as pretty average, poor tracking, accuracy and response. Certainly compared to the likes of the GunCon and the Blaze for the PlayStation. So they kind of, again, another sort of nail in the coffin for Sega on that one, which is a shame considering. And then when we talk about the games, we can talk about the massive conversion that we can talk about. So as time's moved on though, chaps, and Sony released the behemoth that was the PS2, so came with it more light guns, including the second iteration of its GunCon shooter in 2001. Funnily enough, originally called the GunCon 2. Which sat ahead of several other third-party sort of hangers-on at the time. Xbox 2 had a couple of guns by Mad Catz, which were very green, very dumpy, and very average. Again, like I had an original Xbox.
Did I? Sorry to interrupt.
Go on.
Okay, let's settle this then.
For the last 15 minutes,
got a gun to my head.
ruffling around his house, looking at me, he's putting out drawers.
What have you found, Dill? He's going to sit down with his gun. What gun have you got?
Everyone's worried to be in the toilet for 15 minutes.
I can.
I came
Welcome back
from the loo ages ago, but then I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure I've got something around it. I'm surrounded by my boxes and, in the throes of sorting out all my crap, and I found my Sega light phaser.
Yes!
Look how sleek it is.
He's got the phaser.
Now that is a dark grey.
And it is very pointy. Now, give it here.
We'll do a
Let's,
poll, I think, won't we? Which colour? It is
We're,
cool.
we're examining the phaser.
And that's legit the second one you got then.
I'm
That's the
saying
second
it's
one.
black, but this bit has kind of faded into a dark grey.
Okay.
With the passage of time.
Interesting.
Guys,
I think
chill out.
I think we're both right, and it was black originally, but now it's
Very
grey.
good. All right, Adrian.
Look, even that's got a proper trigger though, compared to the Menace.
Oh, look, listen.
That's proper.
Better than the Menace.
We've got a clickier trigger.
That's why I brought it, because it's very satisfying.
It is quite space.
Oh, it's very
spacey, doesn't it?
futuristic.
It's very
sort of
pointy.
It's sort of a
It's a
Buck Rogers
phaser. That's
type
why it's not
sort
a
of
gun. It's a
gun, isn't it?
phaser.
Phaser.
It's very, very pointy. But yeah, I just keep it for sentimental
Oh
reasons.
yeah.
Do you know what I find hilarious? Nobody can say phaser without,
Yeah, you
without
can't, yeah.
doing this kind of
Phaser.
glittery jazz hands. Phaser. Phaser. It's a great bit of kit. Thank you, Dill. Thank you
welcome.
for that and aiming it at my head.
Thank you.
We've got a
Wonder
great
what's
selection
going
of
on.
Arsenal in front of us, haven't we, right now?
We have.
We
got,
have, what have we, just to recap, what we got in front of us? We got the gun
Virtua
con.
gun.
We've got the
We've got a
Virtua
gun
gun.
con, and we've got this one, which is a third-party Logic 3 Predator, which I bought a few years back because the connector fits both the Saturn and the PlayStation.
Ooh. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
You'd think that they'd favour one or the other, but no,
So I
we're
bought
hedging
it
the bets.
so I could play two-player Virtua Cop on my Saturn and Die Hard Trilogy on the PS1.
Whoa.
Oh,
And of course,
there's
the
an
Menacer.
afternoon setup.
And Adrian's got his Menace that doesn't work.
And he's got the menace of it. He can't quite understand where the other bit's gone.
No.
Have you got it, or has it just been lost?
Do you want, true story. I actually sold that on eBay. I sent it off, and the person came out to me, yeah, it's not working. You forgot the back of the battery. I was like, oh, for goodness sake. So the person sent it back to me. I gave him a refund. I apologised. So actually, it can't leave me. It said, no, I'm staying with you. You're not selling me.
You're not getting rid of me that easy.
Yep.
You sold it and got it back.
Basically, yeah.
Where were we? We mentioned Xbox, and you laughed. Adrian laughed. I can't remember why. Probably because of that story you just told. But they had a couple of guns, as we said. Just nobody remembers them because they were horrendously average.
I've seen the PS2 ones. I never tried. Did you ever play the PS2
No.
ones still? The gun con? No.
But
Yeah, the
that,
gun
one,
con too,
that
yeah.
one works fine with the PS2 stuff. So if
Oh,
you've
does
got a
it?
gun con,
The
It does.
Sega face.
then
The light
it works.
face.
Yeah, I played Time Crisis 2 on PS2
Nice.
with no issues.
With no issues. But yeah, Xbox, I like the original console. I had it. But yeah, as far as light gun games and stuff, no. It was just lost in the ether. The Xbox One had guns called the Blaster, the Yobo Gameware, or it could have been called the Yobo Gameware. Wireless, that was a wireless one, believe it or not. And the Cypher light gun. And an absolute beast of a unit, almost a metre long when fully assembled. Yeah, which is
It's like,
madness.
So that's similar to the Super Scope then.
Hold my beer, Super Scope.
Yeah. 3 feet,
well-
a meter. It's
Well, this one I was good. Sorry, this one I actually tripped over my own punctuation there, which is interesting. But the metre long, fully assembled gun is actually Konami's Silent Scope light rifle from
I
2004.
remember Silent Scope in the arcade.
Yeah, it was
That's a great game.
extremely heavy. It was once again green. They love the green, don't
Okay.
they? Or the orange, and beat both the Super Scope and the Menacer for size and weight. Believe it or not.
So is that the biggest home console light gun you can buy?
I'm led to believe
Money can
that
buy.
Konami's Silent Scope light rifle from 2004 is in fact the largest
There you
dump.
go.
Although there is a little bit of a caveat to that because the Magnavox Odyssey rifle could arguably sort of, because that's quite long as well.
Okay.
It's also got a very chunky cable. I don't know. But as far as up for debate, that one. But the more modern era, I think, definitely. So that was 2004, and we found something heavier and more grotesque than the Super Scope and the Menacer. Who'd have thought? So now I'm gonna throw a bit of something out there. Comes what many believe to be one hell of a con, but a must-have, well-loved con nonetheless. So after the extremely varied mixed bag that was the early 2000s, and there's tons more guns that I haven't mentioned, I've just kind of done a bit of a whistle stop. So if there's guns that you think deserve a shout out, just tag us on your socials. We'll put a post up and we'll do a bit of maybe a sort of a collage or something of those guns, of your pictures or whatever. But there's a bunch of other guns out there. But there was a massive mixed bag. There was a lot that didn't do well. There was a couple that did quite well, but again, it was a bit of a sort of torrid time for light guns. We did see someone come into the mix that we didn't think would happen.
I know what happened.
What happened in 2006, Adrian? What released?
Nintendo decided to release a whole new console called the Wii.
They did.
And the Wii helped revitalize the light gun genre. I got huge respect for Nintendo.
So how did they do it?
Controllers, the Wii remotes, were basically had a phaser anyway. You could use it for
The
many
light
games.
beam. Yeah.
The light beam.
So, and you already had the bar set up on your TV because
It was unbelievable.
That's right.
And obviously, it used it for tennis and stuff like that. You know, and then you got the.
Was this technically a light gun though, or is this just a motion?
No, it has got a trigger though, isn't it?
Oh, no, I know. One of my favourite light gun games was on the Wii.
This is good. This is going to cause debate.
Yes, is it a light gun because it use light?
This is the debate that we have. Okay, so just to sort of set the foundations, as it were. Yeah, the Nintendo Wii was released to the world in 2000. I can't believe it's 2000. We're getting on for 20 years.
Don't just carry on.
We're getting on for 20 years. That's you know how on all my pods I make everyone feel really old. Yeah. So it had an amazing new way of playing games via body movements and gestures. Naturally, then, a light gun attachment was kind of never far away from sort of people's minds, all right? So enter the Wii Zapper, released in 2007. Was it a standalone light gun for the new console?
No.
Was it full of new and exciting technology with buttons and lights? No.
It was a bit of white plastic.
Was it a cheap bit of plastic?
Instead...
Yes, it was. I've got one somewhere.
Didn't be gone for the next 20 minutes.
Where that is.
Instead...
Is it? No.
It was it was a single piece of white plastic shaped like a gun of sorts.
Yeah.
But despite this, it was something pretty special. Okay.
I got it because House of the Dead had to be played.
Yeah.
You couldn't just do it with the
You don't
Wii
wanna
thing.
just wave it
Like you had to
around.
have the plastic thing. I had to get it for that.
It was cool how it worked though, because you slotted it in and then obviously pulling the trigger on the plastic.
It was cool.
Push the button.
Very
so,
clever.
Yeah, it was well done.
It's clever.
It was
Well,
well
as
done.
we've
And
already-
also,
yeah, go on, Dale.
as an aside, sorry, going back to the Menacer, I just done a little search on the site. It's Maxina.
Oh, of course it was.
It's Maxina.
So basically, he's the Gunstar Heroes guy, but he also talks about his role with the Menacer, and you can check that out in our archive.
There you go. As an aside or a sidebar, you can
Thank you.
pause it if you like and go and have a listen to that pod, or you can listen to it
Thank
afterwards. But it's available now. So, as Adrian already demonstrated, we had a rectangular Wiimote, I think they called it, didn't
So
they?
cool, yeah.
Which was they were so
And the
cool because
nunchucks, you could attach that, and you could use that as like a bow and arrow and everything on
there were
Wii
so
Sports and
many
things.
different ways of using it, like the cycling where you could. It's absolutely brilliant. So the Wiimote.
Well, there you go. It's nearly 20 years old, so it'd be a Wii Pod soon.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
wow.
did.
It's pretty retro. Did we do a whole? Did we do a whole episode?
did one when it's still
Did we
retro when we did it.
We did talk about the Wii, but we could do a proper Wii. I don't know.
I think we did a Wii one.
We did a Wii.
Dylan's already done a Wii in the
We've
pod.
already done a Wii.
Dylan's just done a Wii. Yeah, we're not going to do a pod. We're not going to do a pod about that Wii. Jesus. And then decided to come back and point a gun at my head, which is fantastic. Standard stuff.
No. A phaser.
No, what was it? It's not a phaser. It's a phaser with the hand.
Phaser. Jazz hands.
Phaser jazz hands. So, where were we? So, the Wiimote, fantastic little bit of kit. Quite weighty, actually, to be fair, with the batteries.
With the batteries,
It also had sound that came out of the remote as well, which
Right.
supported what was going on
Little
the screen.
speaker,
Very clever. It also very cleverly calibrated with the unit. There was no sort of long processes. You just literally had to put it on a flat surface, I think it was, and let it do its thing. That would lay flat at the front of the gun holder, effectively, with the infrared panel pointing at the sensor bar. Mm-hmm. And the other good thing about the Wii is the sensor wasn't this chunky, great big box. It was a tiny little thin bar that you could. I think it even came with a bit of Velcro or something.
Yeah, you
didn't
can
it?
stick it on,
Yeah, that you could put on the top of the telly, or if you've got it on a unit, you put it on the front of the unit. And then the nunchuck sat vertically in a holster at the back of the gun to be used as a handle and a trigger.
Yes.
Okay. Very, I mean, despite its simple appearance at first glance, it's actually a genius bit of kit. It's really, really clever. It was incredibly accurate on the Wii shooting games and handled extremely well. So it's up there. It's definitely up there. So naturally, it was also wireless, as we've already said, due to the Wiimote or nunchuck not needing to be tethered to the TV. They needed to be tethered to each other, but obviously there was nothing that had to connect it to the sensor bar, etc. There was an actual light gun for the Wii, believe it or not, before anyone kicks off in the comments. Okay. Yeah, it was called the Nyko Perfect Shot from 2007.
No, okay.
Now, I would imagine that because the vast majority of people bought the official Nintendo one, that this has probably just disappeared into obscurity.
Yeah.
It's fairly accurate. It looks like a Colt 1911, which is sort of a standard, like a World War II type pistol. And for a third-party attempt, it performed relatively well. So it received quite good feedback. Okay. But I think it was just massively overshadowed by the genius bit of engineering that was the Wii Zapper. So there we go. There was a Wii iteration of the earlier Zapper. Are we sick of hearing about light guns yet?
No,
of course we're not.
We love that.
Don't be stupid. So I've got two more on my whistle stop tour. Now, as I've said before, and as I always say, there's going to be somebody or people listening. You guys are going to be going, James, you've forgotten this. You've got. Yeah. Don't worry. Tell us, tag us, show your pictures.
Don't get your knickers in a twist.
If you've got a collection, don't get your wires in a twist. If you've got guns, you've got collection, you've got games or whatever, tag us in photos, tag us all over the social. It'd be brilliant because we'll do a little collage or something and we'll put them all together and maybe put them on our socials. It'd be really good to see your collections and stuff. So the final two on my whistle stop tour of hardware then, fellas. First up is a gun that had to have new technology actually created to allow it to play on HD TVs. Being as in 2007 when it was released, old school CRT TVs were pretty much had been replaced. Relying on the success of the GunCon 1 and 2 from previous consoles, Sony created another gun boasting this new tech for new TVs via two sensors hung over the top corners of the flat panel TV. So this will be like an LCD.
I've seen it. Yeah, I've not used it, but I have seen it. Yeah.
There we are. Any guesses what the gun was called?
The GunCon 3.
It was. Absolutely unbelievable marketing. Yeah, brilliant. So, of course, it was called the GunCon 3. It is considered one of the best light guns made, although never got to see its true potential due to very few games being released, which actually made use of it. Some of which were previous titles redressed for the PS3. So even sort of like even some of like exclusive titles, very hard to come by. Just not much going on again on the software side. So it's sad, really, isn't it? Great bit of tech that was created for new flat panel TVs, plasma TVs, LCD TVs, and
that would have been it.
There you go. That would have been the breakthrough, but nobody was interested. So there we go. That brings me to, for my list anyway, the last hurrah, should we say, in the light gun journey. And again, there's plenty more there, so do shout us out. But at least for the hardware. So last up, Sony, again, flexing their light gun muscles with something called the Move Sharpshooter from 2011. Now, this thing looked like an MP5 submachine gun, but it had like quite a comedic, colourful ball attached to the front of it. Okay, do you remember the PlayStation Move
controllers? Yeah, so this is the Move controllers. Yeah.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah. So the Move controllers kind of copying the Wiimote, because they kind of did. They were rectangular bars, except they had this sort of
the ball,
like a hazy ball on the top that lit up in different colours.
Yeah.
And had
they had a Harry Potter game, I think, quite famously linked to it.
Yeah,
you use like wands and stuff.
Yeah, well, they obviously then when PSVR came along, they repurposed the Move controllers for that, and obviously, some games work really well. Played a bit of golf and stuff.
And that's about it.
Yeah, bit of golf and stuff.
So much like the previous GunCons, it is accurate. It handles well. And it even has a sliding barrel to reload. Yeah, which is pretty cool. Okay. That said, it suffered the same fate as the GunCon 3 in that developers just weren't making as many light gun games anymore. So it only saw a small percentage of action. Again, another part of the theme. Yeah, it just carries on with the same theme. So with that bombshell, that wraps up our somewhat potted, patchy and speedy history of some of the light guns themselves. I do realise, and this is for those, I've said this already, but interested in crossing the T's and dotting the I's, there are way more light guns than I've listed, with a stack coming from third-party manufacturers that I haven't spoken about, and some for consoles and computers that many wouldn't even know had them. We said the Amiga, Amstrad CPC, the Speccy, etc.
Yeah.
You know, if you fancy a bit of a trip down the old rabbit hole, then do go and have a look into those, because those consoles did have some light
None
guns.
for the Jaguar, though. Just saying.
Anyway, moving on. That's twice it's been mentioned in a pod that's got nothing to do with this.
No, I'm just saying, it's odd, isn't it? When you think about it.
I suppose it's like similar like with the Dreamcast though. Like they just weren't around long enough, I guess, for anyone to think, we need a light gun for this console. I don't know.
It's so weird that certainly with the home console type thing anyway, there's never a real foothold, was there, with any particular gun? I mean, okay, you could argue the gun con, etc., but again,
I suppose with the
library.
home console thing, the limited libraries, because you're looking at games developers are going to they're reliant on the gun having a big user base.
Yep.
And if they spend whatever amount of money and time developing games that only a tiny percentage of that console's users has the gun.
I suppose all the parts of the puzzle have to fall into place, don't they?
So
I also think, interestingly, that PCs wouldn't really need as much the light gun because you've got the mouse. And I remember playing, for example, Virtua Cop on the PC. And it would have been more fun with a gun, but I just used my mouse instead. Whereas you play like traditional consoles, it's more just a handheld controller, isn't it? So I think the PC market is probably an area that didn't really require that.
It would have been more fun with a light gun.
I'm not denying that.
But obviously,
a mouse is just cheap,
using a mouse to move the crosshairs.
Sega went
instead.
for a weird period of releasing their games on the PC. Do you remember that?
They did in the 90s,
In the
didn't
90s.
they? Yeah.
I did have Virtual Cop, and I used to go, look how good I am.
I'm just going to click on everything and just kill everyone. Yeah.
Shoot him.
So there we go. That is a very, very potted and brief history of some of the... but I think we've had great fun there, because thanks for bringing them along, chaps, as well. And showing off the hardware, that's excellent. We'll get some pics up as well, and we'll probably get some stupid things.
I never need any encouragement to whip out my stunner. Bing bong.
Yet another bombshell. Have to move on. And there was me worried at the start about faux pas with arcade game names and being slightly derogatory to certain people.
I think I'm the most mature one on this pod for once. What's that saying?
Boom. Yeah, exactly. Third bombshell of the night. So, chaps, what do we think about the hardware? I mean, you've obviously, what do we think overall? Do we think mixed bag?
Yeah.
Huge
mixed
bag,
I really liked the Light Phaser when I had it, but I only played a couple of games on it. I really can't remember any others. The Menacer, it was a big disappointment. I loved the Virtua gun, but again, there wasn't many games.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate, isn't it?
So in terms of at home, mixed bag.
But I have to say,
in the arcade,
it's like a magnet. When you go to the arcade, because we didn't have many light guns at home, really, they're the arcades I wanted to go on the
or
most.
because the ones at home were disappointing.
Yeah.
You'll be pleased to know that we're moving on. That's a nice segue.
There you go.
Well done. The maturity continues. Yeah. Good Lord. So, now we can't talk about the hardware, of course, without mentioning more of the games, can we?
Yes.
Of course not. So we left things in gaming on the actual software side on the brink of moving into the 90s. So that's where we're going to pick it up from. And man, what a decade. Yeah. What a decade. So the biggest titles of the early 90s included, of course, we mentioned Terminator 2, Judgment Day. Anyone remember that cabinet?
Oh,
yeah, amazing.
Awesome.
Massively impressive.
Amazing.
So good.
I loved how I can picture it like a big Terminator would just sort of walk into the screen, almost the whole size, all different perspectives, wasn't it? So cool.
It's it's an awesome looking game, and the cabinet's awesome looking as well. Vibrant colours, and it's got all the text and the font and the design, everything of the film, and it just it fits just so well.
Yeah,
it's really really good. So that was
because they developed it at the time they were making the film as well. So you've got all the proper artwork from the film. You've got Arnold. You've got Linda Hamilton.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, and they even used Arnold's stunt double they digitized him for the T800 in the game.
Amazing.
And I think Linda Hamilton's twin sister, who, as we all know, was in the film.
Oh, yeah, her.
She's in
stunt double.
She's in the game as well as Sarah. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
But it was developed at the time that the film was being made, so they had access to all that.
I really
when they were making the arcade.
Was it on the Mega Drive as well? Or was it a Mega CD game?
No, Mega Drive. Because that's what they used to push the Menacer when it came out, was the T2 game.
I never got it.
Yeah,
and
it was Midway, wasn't it? The arcade game.
Oh,
I'm sure it was.
Yes,
Midway.
yes, it was. But just don't play it on the SNES.
No. Well, play on the SNES, but not with the Super
Well, you
Scope.
can play on the SNES and the Super Scope, but you're only ever going to get about 70% of the level done. Yeah. Also, the cabinets. There was a version that came with 2-player support as well. And as we've already said, riding off the film's success from 1991, massive success. So other big titles of the early 90s were Lethal Enforcers from 92.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that's one that gets a little bit forgotten sometimes. Like some people rave about it, and then others are like, barely played it.
Yeah,
But
I mean, it was another one.
I like it.
It was another one with digitized graphics, like
Yes.
the T2 one. Maybe didn't look quite as nice.
No, I'd argue
it was still fun.
I'd argue that. Still backdrops, various city locations, banks,
and they just pop up.
city streets, and digitised crims trying to shoot you.
Crim.
And we also had the likes of Tin Star. Remember Tin Star was sort of a cartoony western on the SNES? No, that was quite a popular one.
Okay.
If you haven't seen it, go and look at it. It looks really good fun, to be fair. I've played it on the SNES without, obviously, a light gun, but with the gun, I imagine probably great fun. It's like a cartoony western.
Okay, nice.
So it's quite good. Alien 3.
Yes.
Lucky and Wild.
Love Lucky and Wild. Love Lucky and Wild.
Love a bit of Lucky and Wild.
They got that, haven't they? Hard gaming.
Hard gaming, yeah. It's so much
You're
fun.
unlucky if you're the guy with the steering wheel because you can have the two guns.
Have you ever played it on your own, though?
It's possible.
Yeah, one hand on the wheel, one hand on the gun. Come on.
Hey.
Oh, man.
Such
How
a
did you
great
get
game.
on?
Not very well.
No, okay.
Not very well.
So it's possible.
It's possible, but you need certain skills that I don't possess.
Oh dear! And believe it or not, around the same time, there was a game based on the US TV show Cops. There was actually a light gun game.
Bad boys.
Yeah.
What you gonna do?
I love that on Sky. When I first got
Sky One.
I used to watch Cops all the
all the
time.
time. On repeat,
Simpsons, WWF, and Cops.
And then Unsolved Mysteries. Remember that?
Yeah,
that was a good
I like
show
a bit of
too.
Unsolved Mysteries.
And like random UFO programs as well. Like,
Yeah,
which
there
are always
seems to be
always
loads of
popping
those,
up all over the place.
DJ Cat in the morning. Do you remember watching DJ Cat?
Oh my god! Yeah, I do, yeah. Games World then.
Cat.
Games World.
Yeah.
And actually, Big Boy Barry, his
Yeah.
little link,
Yeah.
he started to work at Mad Cats and he was involved
And
in
they
these
made light guns.
light guns. There is a
There you
link
go.
there.
Nice, you brought it
I'm
back.
glad
there,
you
'cause
brought- I was
we
gonna
were
say,
getting- we were getting off track.
the
and you brought
I
tangent
it
want to
was
keep
back.
my
quite vast.
mature badge on today.
You almost slipped, but you're all right. So the biggest release, and also the biggest step up in visuals and depth came in 1994 with the first game to use real-time 3D polygon graphics with texture mapping.
I think I know it.
What am I talking about? We've all
Mad Dog McCree.
No, because that was video footage, wasn't it?
No, we've already
With
mentioned.
Polygon, Time Crisis. Was that
We've
first?
already
Virtua
no.
Cop?
Yes,
I can't
Virtua Cop.
remember which was first.
Couldn't remember which was first. It was in fact Virtua Cop, 94, just pit Time Crisis. But yeah, 3D polygon graphics, texture mapping. So of course it made a difference where you hit your enemies. Brought a whole new level into
That was one of the
game.
things I did love about Virtua Cop as well, because you could have like the justice shot if you shoot the gun out of their hands.
Ooh yeah. The
I like how the
justice
target.
shot.
Of course, whenever I play it on the Saturn, I shoot all of them like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Because then they do like a backflip, like so good.
So unnecessary.
Yeah, but if you want to be,
I wish we could do like a who's better at Virtual Cop? Adrian with his mouse or Keith with his light
you
gun?
would probably
you
better
would
with
be,
your
'cause of mouse.
Yeah, because I borrowed Virtua Cop off you
For the PC?
version. Yeah. I was like, oh, it was really good with the mouse. Click, mouse buddies, click.
It's not how it's supposed to be played, is it? No.
Oh,
No,
you
I'm-
had Sega Rally as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh, was it good on PC?
Yeah, it's good.
But I'm more a fan of Screamer as a racing game.
Yeah,
on
Screamer
PC.
was good.
Hold on. Can you use a light gun with Screamer or Sega Rally? If you can't, then shut up.
Whatever, James.
I'm shutting this one down. Now, what were you going to say?
No, Scream. Well, no, let's not talk about Screamer.
No, let's
Let's
talk
talk
about
about
Light
light
Guns.
All right. I won't allow it then. It won't allow it. But it began life in the arcade, but was also ported to the Saturn a year later. And then Windows in 1996. Yeah.
Mouse.
So, so what?
I played Rocket League with a mouse. You know how much I love the mouse.
God, quick, move
You
on.
don't. You played
No,
Rocket
I
League with a
You
mouse.
know I do. Move on. Everyone knows
I didn't.
that.
No, I didn't.
You
know
did.
that. I knew it was a keyboard. I didn't know it was a mouse.
Ah,
Rocket
okay.
I use both, yeah.
No, I genuinely did. Okay, fine. I won't start talking about those videos on TikTok that you've done then with your goals then. on Rocket League. Anyway, so Virtua Cop began
Cop.
life in the arcade, as already said. Windows 1996. Why is it an important game? Why is it an important game in the genre? So mainly because it was the first gun game where enemies would react differently depending on where they were shot, as we've already said. In addition, parts of the environment would be destructible as well, such as panes of glass.
Yep, panes of glass. You can shoot barrels and things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Making the experience much more immersive than previous light gun titles.
I was on Virtua Cop 2 when you go into the cruise ship, you go through the galley, like through the kitchen, and you can shoot like the watermelons and things, and they explode into pieces.
It's so good.
And there's even a bit where you go into like the ballroom, and at the back there's like the stage, and it's got like a drum kit and stuff set up, and you can shoot the different drums, and they make different sounds. So you can you can shoot the cymbals, and you can shoot the bass drum and stuff.
I love that kind of stuff.
So good.
Well, the game supported use of the Virtua gun, which we've got right beside us here, and the Saturn mouse.
Oh, there you go.
Mouse.
I was saving it. But believe it or not,
I know there is a mouse. I've never owned it,
but why would you?
I don't know.
The gun.
No, to be fair, you got Command and Conquer on the Saturn, haven't you, and stuff like that. So, and I think some Warcraft games.
Yeah, but you wouldn't buy it for your light gun games, no.
Adrian would.
I would actually.
Still would. So other mid-90s offerings were games such as Zombie Raid, Crypt Killer, Gunblade, Area 51, and The Last Bounty Hunter, all from 94 and
Gunblade's
95.
Good.
Yeah.
Gunblade's good.
Very highly reviewed, that one. So the stream of new and exciting light gun games didn't slow down, and in the mid-90s weren't done with this genre, not by a long shot. See what I did there?
Very good.
Thank you. Tough crowd. 1995 saw the second installment of the Virtua Cop series, so they didn't hang around. They pushed the next one out really quickly, continuing their success and different breed of visuals and play style. Shortly after came Point Blank.
Good fun.
It's a divisive game, isn't it? Some people love that game, don't they?
I think most people know it, don't they?
I think it's one of those ones where there's some people that have got it right at the top of their list, and other people are like,
yeah, that's fair. I wouldn't say it's at the top of my list, but it's good fun, especially two-player. Yeah,
I think Andy E. That's his favourite light gun game.
Andy
S.
Andy E. I'm sure it's his favourite light gun game. I'm sure it is. I'm certain it is. In fact, I'm going to put my neck out and say.
So they're like our two Andys, like in Hot Fuzz.
The two Andys.
The two Andys.
Yeah.
Okay.
The greater good.
Crusty jugglers. I love that film.
Oh man, yeah, cracking film. Where were we? Point Blank. So it's a madcap, vibrant, fast-paced arcade gallery-style shooter from Namco. Massive hit in the US as well, which is obviously one of the bigger markets. The same year also saw what many consider one of, if not the greatest light gun game ever created. We've already mentioned it.
Have we?
GunCon compatible, very much so. Yeah.
Time Crisis 2.
The first Time Crisis. God, he's on one today, isn't he?
It's a great game.
I don't know why I put you on the spot. These guys are here as well. But the first Time Crisis game.
Oh, yeah.
Guys, let's wax some lyrical.
So good.
Why is it
Trigger.
good?
Action.
Foot.
Action.
Action.
It's whole being able to duck, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the ducking.
It's the duck hunt.
It's all about the ducks.
So much like Virtua Cop, the game featured rich-looking visuals and texture mapping, but it boasted one very big difference: a pedal.
Big pedal, yeah.
So players would progress through changing locations, each time needing to use the pedal at their feet to initiate the cover system. So this allowed the player to hide or move out from their cover, which could be a barrel, a wall, a door, etc., and take aim at enemies and shoot. So it was especially useful as at any one time there were multiple enemies shooting guns and rocket launchers at the player. And this ingenious addition to this type of game captured the hearts and minds of millions of gamers the world over, with the game still living on in arcades all over the place today.
It was such a clever little mechanic, though. Yeah. And obviously that's where the name of the game comes from, because you can't just hide, because you're on a really strict time limit, which obviously didn't have in like Virtua Cop.
Height crisis.
Cover crisis. Pedal crisis. But no, you're right, because
so clever.
You literally couldn't just like, I'm going to wait.
No,
I'm going to wait.
That timer was harsh as well.
Yeah. And some of the enemies were tough as well.
Yeah.
Like, when they shot, you had like milliseconds to react, didn't you?
Is it possible to complete the game without using the pedal at all?
Is that how you reload in Time Crisis? I forget now.
Yeah.
So whereas with other games where you shoot away from the screen, with that you had to press the pedal to reload. So
I think if I remember correctly, because I remember I played the first one loads, And I think I used to literally just tap the lift it and push it back down straight away, if I didn't want to go to cover. But it was really responsive as well. Like the pedal, there's no delay on it or anything like that. You press the pedal and bang.
It's a big hefty metal pedal as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was good because I've got size 13 feet, so that was really good news. I didn't break it. Yeah. So we are moving on to 1996, 1 year on, and yet more massive titles further strengthened the light gun genre in the market. The House of the Dead.
Yeah.
Sega's hugely popular horror rail shooter.
Good.
And the home console only release of the extremely impressive Die Hard trilogy.
Yes.
Specifically, which one for the light gun?
Die Hard 2.
Yes. And what did you have to do? What was the sort of base premise?
Just shoot
Dulles
stuff around the
Airport.
Dulles Airport, yeah.
Just a good game.
Shoot the terrorists.
Shoot the terrorists, Dulles Airport. There you go. We've wrapped up the story. But it was an interesting fact about that is that there were lots of sort of different teams, and they were really trying to push sort of the PlayStation to a limit that it kind of hadn't been to before, because nobody had done essentially 3 feature games in one box before. Like, you either got 3 kind of slightly average games. I love all of them. I think they're brilliant.
Me too.
And I played 2 to death. I burnt the CD out. I think it was such a great game, and all the sound effects in it as well. And at the start as well, like when it's it's sort of like pans across the front of the airport. And
it's very cinematic. The start,
good.
Everything just explodes.
Yeah.
Like everything blows up. It's like this is brilliant. I used to absolutely love that game. So yeah, that was both in '96. Loved House of the Dead as well. A great sort of spin,
so much fun.
Great spin on that type of game as well. That was another sort of on rail shooter. Saved Dulles Airport from the terrorists, as we've already said. So needless to say, then, that the mid '90s saw a hell of a lot of light gun action, both the arcades and in the home console markets as well. More so in the arcades. We'll come on to that again in a minute. But all of the titles that we mentioned were actually available on both. Again, with your choice of peripheral from the various manufacturers. So as we waft slowly into the late 90s, so studios stuck close to their franchises by releasing sequels of already successful games. House of the Dead 2, Time Crisis 2, Point Blank 2, to name a few. House of the Dead 2, I liked very much so at the arcade, because I seem to remember it was the shotgun one. It was the one where you had a shotgun.
Oh, is it?
I think was it that one, or was it the third one?
No, Time Crisis 2 is the normal kind of.
Oh, no. So House of the Dead 2.
I think the House of the Dead 2 might have been. It's one of those sequels. Because again,
it's either 2 or 3.
It's just a massive plaque for the heart of gaming in Croydon, really.
We love you.
Yeah, so I think it is the shotgun one.
I played that. I don't want to know how much I spent on that, but I just loved it. I don't know why I loved the shotgun kind of so much.
It's one of the best guns in FPS games anyway. A shotgun, isn't it? It's just.
It just felt so like satisfying. There's so much satisfaction from just wading through this like marauding group of zombies, and you're just blasting them with this shotgun, which is absolutely brilliant. So yeah, plenty of titles still coming out. But as we said, a lot of the studios were sticking very close to their franchises, and why not?
There was a few different ones that I remember, like Ghost. Is it Ghost Squad?
Yes,
there's a Sega one, which was a sort of a later one. That was good. There's of course the random Silent Hill arcade game that I mentioned before,
yes, I played
which
that.
is a light gun game.
Can I tell you a story about Ghost Squad? Is that all right?
Go for it.
Because my uncle used to have a villa in Spain, so we went there on holiday. It's the first time I went abroad, actually, for many years, me and my family. So we kind of got the location for free. We had a great time. It's got a swimming pool. It's a lovely holiday, but it's very hot. I'm talking almost 40. So I went in the swimming pool for a bit. I was getting a bit hot. It was that weird time of day. So I went in. I was looking around the villa a bit. I thought I'd poke around a bit, check out some of the cupboards. And inside there was a Wii console. I was like, okay. And I'd done a few more rustling around, and there's a few games. There was the usual ones, the Mario games and stuff. And I saw a game. I was like, wait a minute, there's a Sega logo here. Ghost Squad. So I thought, okay. I set it up with the TV. It took me a while to get it all set up again. And the first game I tried was Ghost Squad. And I was addicted.
It's good, isn't it?
I was like, this game is brilliant. Then Becca was like, we've got to get ready for dinner now. I'm like, no, I'm playing Ghost Squad. Like, stop playing the Wii. You didn't come on holiday to Spain to play the Wii. I'm like, well, I just want to play Ghost Squad.
I'm not going to dinner. I'm skipping dinner for
Ghost Squad.
It's a good game, isn't it? It's so good on the Wii. Ghost Squad.
Good old Wii.
Squad.
I got told off. We were late for the restaurant.
Play Ghost Squad.
It will make you late for dinner.
And especially if you've got a Wii and haven't got the game, get Ghost Squad. Yeah. So where were we? So we also at this time had some successful movie tie-ins games. Okay, that were also doing the rounds in 1997 with the likes of the Lost World Jurassic Park.
Oh yeah.
Which was a great
Really good.
2-player shooter, really good, hard as nails, but it was a good game though. Judge Dredd.
I haven't played that.
Never played
No,
it.
you ever played that
Didn't
one?
see that one.
And the Star Wars trilogy cabinet.
Yeah.
Obviously, lots of people obviously post up on that. So the truth was, though, the genre had sort of seemingly already had its 90s heyday with a slightly dwindling catalogue of fresh ideas. That was until 1999 in Japan, when the game Silent Scope dropped. We've already mentioned that, obviously, with the actual home rifle.
Yeah.
But the arcade cabinet had a hyper-realistic sniper rifle, very clean, very crisp graphics as well. And the title put the player into the shoes of a police sniper in the thick of several terrorist incidents. And the key is, or the goal is rather, to shoot the terrorist targets whilst being very mindful of both your health and the time limit. And you can lose either or both, or gain some depending on who is shot. So obviously, you shoot a terrorist, etc. Or one of the funnier parts of the game is you can actually gain health and time by focusing on a pretty woman in the walking along the street or whatever. Yeah, I won't say any more than that, but yeah, that's apparently part of the game.
Okay.
So there we go. So what made the game a step up from previous cabinets was the use of dual visuals, where the screen displayed a wide view of the incident area, whilst aiming down the scope of the rifle would give a much more zoomed view, allowing target acquisition. And you could shoot your targets in various different locations around the body as well. Along with having to make positional and tactical decisions before targeting and switching, you could also target and switch night vision on and off, depending on light conditions. So it made for a much different experience than sort of previous light gun games.
James,
Other than Adrian shooting me with the Menacer.
I have got binoculars in the Menacer.
Both eyes, Aid. Both eyes. It's
like-
binocular. There you go.
It's like I'm there.
So actually, I eat that Silent Scope. I've already got the binoculars.
Dear, oh dear. Let's get this moved on. So as we hover over the millennium, it's worth mentioning a couple of releases from Capcom based around the Resident Evil series of games. Most notably Survivor and Survivor 2 from 2000-2001. They divided opinion. It's sort of easy to say, I think.
they were all right. I had one
Yeah.
of them.
You had
I
a
think
wee,
it's just
a
the
wee
first
one, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was good.
I
Yeah.
thought it was good.
Yeah.
They didn't perform anywhere near, obviously, as well as the third-person survival horror titles that we know and love. And yeah, some people they rave about them. Some people hate them. I think it kind of sits somewhere in the middle. I think the most overriding thing was that there just wasn't enough of the game. There wasn't. It was sort of too easy. There wasn't enough of it. Not enough bulk. So fair enough. So as the 2000s got into full swing, plenty more arcade cabinets released. Vast swathes of which were sequels after sequels after sequels of other games. Some fresher originals, such as Big Buck Hunter. Which is like a deer hunting game. We had
That was
Ghost
so-
Squad, which we just talked about.
Hey-o.
And Nerf Strike. So there was a bunch of Nerf,
Nerf
games
games,
as well
okay.
released as well. So sort of more the younger teen market,
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah.
More movie tie-ins kept flowing too with the Rambo arcade.
That's a great game.
That's really good.
It's so
I
fun.
think that's a Sega arcade machine, isn't it?
I think it is.
Got a feeling.
Aliens Extinction.
Oh yeah,
later on.
see some of these more modern ones. There's a Terminator one as well, isn't
Yeah,
there? Is it
yeah.
the Terminator Salvation one, possibly?
That's right.
Yeah.
But at that point, where we're seeing those types of the more modern types of
Yeah.
games, that the arcade cabinet and home console industry started to part ways. So up until this point in the journey, most releases in the arcade saw a home console port, which could be used with a selection of the light gun hardware we've already mentioned. The truth of the matter, though, was that TVs were changing. So too did the ability to use the traditional light guns. So manufacturers were simply not very interested in creating new tech and light guns, which worked with LCD or plasma TVs, which dominated the market from about 2004 onwards. Because I remember selling, there was a particular Philips 42-inch plasma from 2004. It went nuts. But yeah, you good luck getting anything to work on it other than just basic TV. So yeah, therefore, whilst amusement and gaming centres saw a steady stream of new light gun cabinets arriving, the home market kind of fizzled out a bit, or more than a bit. So there are always exceptions to the rules, of course, and this one is slightly up for debate. As we've already mentioned, it's not strictly speaking a light gun. Obviously, the Wii Zapper, it's not strictly a light gun in the traditional sense of the gun cons and so on and so forth. But I think still that it's a brilliant piece of kit and
We'll
a
let
great
it
idea.
slide this once.
And they brought us titles such as Wild Guns Reloaded, Target Terror, and of course that absolute classic Link's Crossbow Training.
Yeah. It's infamous, isn't it? It's ridiculous. I've got it. It's a ridiculous game. It should, because you can do it. You can literally do it in the proper game itself. In Twilight
Oh,
Princess.
really?
Obviously, there's a few more rounds, but it's just a tutorial for the main game. Basically,
okay.
it's
That's not good.
pathetic. If I'm being, I
That's
like
not
it.
good.
But it's pathetic.
It was tongue in cheek when I said absolute classic. So
Also, House of the Dead Overkill, which I've mentioned before on the podcast, but that is a Wii title and that is brilliant. That is like
Dead
the
Overkill.
Tarantino version of House of the Dead. It's full of swearing and inappropriateness.
I never got
So, yeah, it's so good. It's so you like this is on a Nintendo console, but it's great.
I'm gonna
It's
go
great.
looking for that.
Yeah,
and
House of the
Ghost
Dead
Squad
Overkill
because I haven't got either.
highly
So
recommend.
I'm going to go and get those. So that's good. So that brings us almost up to date, and with the Wii having flown the flag of light gun games in a time when the genre had pretty much disappeared, with the use of a traditional light gun. So what can we then play today aside from trying to get hold of an old CRT TV, which Keith's just inherited from Dill, actually, funnily enough? There are a few options from companies that make light guns for use with flat screen LED and OLED TVs. So have a Google if you fancy seeing what's out there. And it is worth shouting out a particular company called Sinden. I think
I've heard of
Dill,
them.
I think
Have
we
you
were
heard
we were referencing that earlier.
Yeah.
Um,
Got to get a Sinden.
Got to get Sinden, and they produce light guns for use through Windows, and they use actually the mouse cursor as a way to aim on screen.
Oh, here
meaning
we go.
Oh no! Adrian was right all along.
not a mouse,
the mouse,
The
not a
mouse
mouse.
cursor.
Yeah,
So
but still.
you move the mouse cursor with the gun.
the
so
gun
you
and
can
you- but you have to use the gun. So
Oh, I don't like that.
no, I prefer a mouse. God damn it. So yeah, but that means that essentially they're purpose built guns.
Yeah.
To play on TVs, to play all the old classics. Yeah. So there we go. So arcades and amusement centres today still enjoy a selection of light gun-esque titles with the new Halo Fireteam Raven giant cabinet. I don't know if you've seen that. It's ridiculously large. It's massively impressive. There was a Walking Dead arcade
yeah,
as
I
well.
played that.
Yeah,
That's
Walking
with
Dead
crossbow.
one. Yeah,
Yep,
crossbow.
that was
that's
good
pretty fun.
actually.
Better than Link's crossbow training.
By a sliver.
Now you're asking.
I don't know if you're going to make the one most recent one I've played is the Tomb Raider one.
Yes.
The screen is like the size of the wall.
Yeah.
And
That's
it's-
like the Halo one.
Oh,
It's
is it? I've not seen that
Light
one.
gun.
Yeah, light gun game, and you play as Lara, and you have a handgun, and you just go around and shoot things.
Nice.
Boom.
That does sound good.
Just
But
like Tomb Raider, but
but not like Tomb. Or
not
sort
like,
of like Tomb
not
Raider.
like Tomb Raider at all.
But
yeah.
the Halo one, you sit in almost like a sphere, and the screens go all the way on the side of you. It's
That
insanely
sounds
large.
cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's like a $5 a go though. So yeah, good luck with that. But yeah, so we've got those two, and there was obviously a version of Luigi's Mansion done as well, which is the
Yes,
vacuum
I played
cleaner.
that. Yeah, it's good.
This is great fun.
I like the Luigi Mansion games, and it's good, isn't it? The FPS version.
So yeah, great fun. But so it's therefore quite tough to decide exactly when the light gun genre had its golden age. So because of course you've got two different streams of arcade and home console, which basically parted ways.
Yeah.
Let's say sort of early 2000s. So what do we think, fellas? Was it the Duck Hunt Hogan's Alley era of the late 80s? Was it the franchise-rich Time Crisis and House of the Dead era of the mid-90s? Or was it the arcade cabinet dominance of the 2000s? Or even beyond that with the Wii and the Xbox, etc.? You decide. So,
90s.
yeah, you reckon
90s
Keith's
for me.
going
90s.
I just
Yeah.
think, yeah.
Time Crisis.
Where in the 90s? We say mid.
I say mid-90s because the experience at home on the PlayStation and the Saturn pretty much matched what you had in the arcade. So like you said about things sort of becoming growing further apart.
Yeah, well, it did
that
this
was
weird
the point.
thing.
Yeah, that was the point where it really came together.
That's right.
Before it went off again. And
Yeah.
It did that
technology.
weird thing where both industries were miles apart.
Yeah.
They came together. I'd
that
say
point,
probably
in the mid-90s.
94-ish, Virtua Cop.
95, 96, just
Yeah,
'cause,
94,
when the PlayStation
96
came
that,
out.
that
and-
bit there.
Yeah.
The pinch point, and then again, early 2000s drifted like really quickly apart.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what do you reckon, Dill? Mid-90s for where is he? He's gone. Just say yes or
He's
no.
giving you a thumbs up.
Thumbs up, yes. So mid-90s. If you don't agree, tell us. If you agree, tell us. Yeah, tag us up and tell us about the. Oh, I tell you what we have got. Yeah,
Pizza's here, that's the
pizza's
fun.
here.
We've got
But no,
pizza.
also, what's interesting is we did a little poll.
Yeah.
I think Adrian put this one out on the socials and just threw the casting net open
Oh,
didn't we?
yeah, well.
and said, right, what's your favourite light gun title? What we got? What results have we
I
got?
put it on Twitter, but you can only do up to 4 options. So I was like, a bit hamstrung there. I also put it on Facebook, and people can add their own options. And Dylan added about 20 different options. I think. Didn't really, but I just said, "What's your favorite light gun series or video games?" And the interested in Twitter, Time Crisis was number one.
Ooh,
with
okay.
almost
Number one. Okay.
almost 50% of the votes. House of the Dead and Virtua Cop was joint second. Both sharing 21.4,
Okay.
and some crazy people chose Other. Never heard of that game, but, but that got about almost 10%. Interestingly, the Facebook poll, which we had a few more different things. We got things like Point Blank, Ready, Aim, Tomatoes was added as well. Gunblade was in there, and that was added by Tony Barnes, who made Dead Desert Strike.
Yeah,
So thank you,
Gunblade,
Tony.
that's really fun.
Dylan added Safari Hunt.
Yeah.
There was also Virtua Cop, House of the Dead, Time Crisis. Was very, very popular again, believe it or not. But by a sliver, Time Crisis won again with 26%. Then followed by House of the Dead, which had 24%. Then Virtual Cop, then Duck Hunt, then Point Blank, and then Safari Hunt joined Gunblade with 2%.
Amazing.
Time Crisis pretty much takes.
That's fair. I mean, I love Time Crisis and Virtua Cop. I'm attached to Virtua Cop because I had a Saturn at the time. So when I got the gun and everything,
amazing.
Both amazing games.
Yeah. Oh, just the memories. The memories. So there we have it. As we power down for another trip through one of gaming's greatest spheres, we'd love to hear from you guys out there, listeners, viewers alike, about your light gun memories. So what hardware did you have? What do you still have? What games were your favourite? And what was your best arcade experience with one of the light gun cabinets back in the day? As always.
And if you've got a spare battery compartment for the Menacer, send it to Adrian.
Chuck it for me, please.
Send it Adrian's way. Absolutely.
I won't sell it. I'm going to keep it. It's
Battery compartment, Sega Menacer, let us know.
Yep.
Yeah. As always, hit us up on the socials. Send us your stories and pics because we'd absolutely love to see them with your collections. Until next time, have a great time gaming. See you again.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. We really hope you enjoyed it. For more Arcade Attack goodness, you can find us on every major social media platform, or you can check out our website at arcadeattack.co.uk. If you'd like to support the podcast, please leave us a review on your platform of choice. It really helps us to grow, and we truly appreciate it when anyone takes the time to do so. If you're interested in supporting us further and getting your hands on some extra bonus content and a chance to shape that content, you can sign up to our Patreon for just $4 a month at patreon.com/arcadeattack. Until next time, take care, and we'll speak to you soon.